Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the LAC Forum, as we at the Development Centre call the International Economic Forum on Latin America and the Caribbean. Dear Secretary-General, dear Mathias, dear Anabel Gonzalez, our partner in crime, Vice President for Countries and Regional Integration at the Inter-American Development Bank, dear Mr. Benoit Larouki, French National Assembly member representing French citizens in Latin America and the Caribbean, dear ministers from the region, dear distinguished authorities, dear guests, dear friends, good afternoon and welcome again. It's a pleasure to have you here, see you all here at the OECD for this important gathering, which is jointly organized by the OECD Development Centre, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the French development agency, Agence, française de développement. This year's forum takes place at a crucial moment for Latin America and the Caribbean, as the region navigates a rapidly changing global landscape shaped by economic uncertainty, geopolitical shifts, and accelerating technological and climate transitions. At the same time, the region holds enormous opportunities, from its renewable energy potential and strategic resources to its human capital and growing role in global value chains. Today's discussion will focus on how to unlock these opportunities through greater investment and deeper regional and international partnerships. This year's forum is especially meaningful, as it marks the 10th anniversary of the OECD Latin America and the Caribbean Regional Program, a decade of strengthened partnership and policy dialogue between OECD and LAC countries. To help guide today's discussion, it's a great privilege to welcome leaders and partners who have played an important role in strengthening dialogue and coordination and cooperation between Latin America and the Caribbean and the international community. So without further ado, it is my great pleasure to invite the OECD Secretary-General, Mr. Mathias Cormann, to open today's proceedings and share his reflections on the region's place in an increasingly complex global landscape. Mathias, the floor is yours.
Muchas gracias, Raga.
Thank you very much, Raga.
Estimado primer ministro de Peru.
Dear Prime Minister of Peru, Vice President Gonzalez, Member of Parliament Benoit Larouki, dear colleagues, dear friends. Welcome to the International Economic Forum on Latin America and the Caribbean, the theme of which this year is Unlocking Opportunities in a Changing World. Many thanks to the IADB, Inter-American Development Bank, and the Agence, française de développement, with whom we've partnered for the organization of the forum over the last 18 years. And it's a partnership that we deeply value. I'm making an effort to speak Spanish, and I'm still learning this language, so I would ask for your kind patience. Latin America and the Caribbean is one of the most important regions in the world for the OECD, not just because we share basic values, democracy, the rule of law, open markets, but also because the region plays a strategic role in the global economy, which is being reconfigured as we speak. The world needs what Latin America and the Caribbean have: critical minerals, clean energy, farm capacity, and a young and dynamic population. So the question isn't whether the region has what the world needs. The question is whether the region is ready to make the most of these. And to do that, it's important to instate ambitious and wide-ranging reforms in 4 key areas. I'll move now to English to detail these further.
So first, mobilizing private investment. Phew. Longer next time. Total investment in Latin America and the Caribbean stands at around 20% of gross domestic product, roughly half the level of emerging and developing economies in Asia. That gap is not primarily a financing gap, it is a confidence gap rooted in regulatory complexity, shallow capital markets, and limited access to finance. Capital markets in the Latin America and Caribbean region are equivalent to 37% of GDP on average, compared to 64% across OECD countries. And effectively, the capital markets in Latin America and the Caribbean are concentrated in just 3 markets: Brazil, Mexico, and Chile. None of the 7 countries covered by our product market regulation indicators offers a full one-stop shop for business registration. I mean, that is a solvable problem. Simplifying regulations, deepening capital markets, scaling blended finance instruments, all of those measures can help unlock the investment the region needs without waiting for global financial conditions to improve. If and when global financial conditions improve, it will just improve the upside, but you should do it anyway. Second, strengthening regional integration. Just 14% of exports from Latin America and the Caribbean go to other countries in the region. Compare that to 49% in Asia and 68% in Europe. So 14% of exports from Latin America and the Caribbean go to other countries in the region, compared to 49% in Asia and 68% in Europe. The intra-regional trade potential is enormous, and it is largely untapped. Our trade facilitation indicators show that bringing the region's trade facilitation practices in line with World Trade Organization Trade Facilitation Agreement would reduce trade costs by almost 16%. Lifting remaining barriers to services trade, particularly in transport, logistics, and professional services, would further compound that benefit. And advancing competitive neutrality, including through better governance of state-owned enterprises, would create the level playing field that regional integration requires. I mean, these are real, concrete, tangible opportunities to achieve stronger and sustainable growth. Third, strengthening public institutions. The public procurement accounts for 6% of GDP across Latin American countries. Our data, covering 19 economies in the region, shows that only 11 apply risk management in procurement, and just 5 systematically require disclosure of beneficial ownership of bidders. That is a pretty significant governance gap, both in terms of fiscal efficiency and in terms of public trust. There's been meaningful progress on integrity frameworks across the region, but implementation gaps remain, particularly in political finance and lobbying. Closing these gaps is not just about good governance in the abstract, it is about creating the institutional credibility that attracts investors, retains talents, and sustains reform over time. Fourth, raising the productivity of labor. Average labor productivity in Latin America and the Caribbean is just 33% of the OECD average, a third. That single statistic captures the core structural challenge, and also the core opportunity of the region's development trajectory. Low skill levels are part of the story. In Chile, Ecuador, Mexico, and Peru, more than 60% of adults lack basic numeracy skills. Informality is the other major factor. Over 40% of households in the region rely entirely on informal work. Simpler tax regimes, stronger social protection systems, and better access to finance for small businesses are all part of a formalization agenda. But none of it works without a sustained investment in education, vocational training, and lifelong learning that reaches people who have been left behind. En conclusión, estos cuatro desafíos, inversión, integración, instituciones y productividad.
These four challenges, investment, integration, institutions, and productivity, are deeply interconnected. You can't treat them in isolation. They require the elaboration of a coherent strategic vision and an ever-deepening regional cooperation. Now, the good news is that the world is providing Latin America and the Caribbean region with an unprecedented opportunity. Global value chains are changing shape. There's a rise in demand for critical minerals, and the region has exactly what global markets need. The time to act is now. The OECD will stand by you at each step of the way.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Muchas gracias, Secretary.
Thank you very much, Secretary General.
If I were to decide to speak the Spanish that I know, I would have to say, buenos días, sí, sí, claro, una cerveza, por favor. And that would maybe not, it got your attention, but it's maybe not the message that I would leave you with. But the message, dear Mathias, that you left with us is very important. There are challenges that are solvable, and you identified many of them, so let's get to work. It's now my great pleasure to invite Anabel Gonzalez, the Vice President for Countries and Regional Integration at the Inter-American Development Bank, to deliver her opening remarks. And I want to once again thank Anabel for the great partnership, both with this and the Caribbean Development Dynamics. So Anabel, the floor is yours.
Buenas tardes, bon après-midi, and good afternoon. I'll try to make my English match Mathias' Spanish. So I'll try at least. So it's a pleasure to be here to join Mathias, to join Benoit for this year's Latin America and Caribbean Forum. And it's also a pleasure to be here with our colleagues, ministers from Latin America and the region, the Prime Minister, and with all of you. The partnership between the OECD, the AFD, and IDB matters because it combines something that is increasingly valued in today's international environment: rigorous analysis, operational experience, and sustained engagements with countries trying to solve difficult problems in real time. And this year's discussion comes at an important moment for the region. For many years, conversations about Latin America and the Caribbean were dominated by macroeconomic fragility. Today, the picture is more nuanced. Over the past 2 decades, the region strengthened monetary institutions, improved financial regulation, reduced poverty, and built greater resilience to external shocks. Inflation has come down sharply from recent peaks. Banking systems remain broadly sound. Sovereign risk spreads, while differentiated across countries, remain well below levels that in earlier decades would have accompanied a period of global volatility like the current one. These are important achievements, and they're not automatic. They reflect years of institutional learning and difficult policy decisions. But stability by itself is not enough. The central economic challenge facing Latin America and the Caribbean today is growth, or more precisely, the need for sustained productivity growth. This is where the region's greatest opportunity now lies, and where the most important work still needs to be done. According to the OECD's latest Latin America Economic Outlook, and Mathias referred to this, labor productivity in the region now stands at only about 1/3 of OECD levels, down from roughly 40% in 1990. More than half of workers remain in informal employment, and investment levels continue to lag other emerging regions. That combination has consequences that are economic, social, and increasingly political. Without stronger growth, fiscal pressures intensify, governments struggle to expand infrastructure, to improve public services, or to finance the energy transition while maintaining debt sustainability. Labor informality persists across generations, and over time, the gap between macroeconomic stability and citizens' expectations becomes harder to sustain politically. This is why growth is returning to critical minerals and supply chain reliability. This creates a significant opportunity for Latin America and the Caribbean. But geography or geology alone does not generate development. Capturing this opportunity will also require thinking beyond national markets alone. Latin America and the Caribbean can play an important role as a connector across regions and value chains. That increases the importance of regional integration, improving fiscal and digital corridors, strengthening regulatory coherence, reducing trade and logistic costs, and building production ecosystems that allow firms to achieve scale and compete internationally. The countries and regions that will benefit most from this shift are those that are able to convert assets into productive ecosystems with reliable infrastructure, competitive markets, skilled workers, regulatory predictability, and institutions capable of implementation. This is where the reform agenda becomes decisive. The OECD's recent work on foundations for growth and competitiveness rightly emphasizes three interconnected areas: enabling conditions such as infrastructure, human capital, and institutional quality, incentives that allow firms to invest and compete, and productive development policies that support innovation, technology adoption, and integration into higher value chains. These activities reinforce each other, and importantly, they require persistence. One lesson from the region's experience is that reforms rarely fail because the diagnosis is unknown. In many cases, the diagnosis is well understood. The difficulty lies in implementation capacity and in sustaining reforms across political cycles. It is no coincidence that more countries in the region are deepening their engagement with the OECD through accession processes, country programs, and other formats. That engagement helps anchor reforms, strengthen institutions, and improve policy continuity across political cycles. For investors, alignment with OECD standards signals predictability and credibility. For governments, it provides a practical framework for sustaining reform momentum over time. And this is why the IDB actively supports countries in translating those standards into implementable reforms and stronger institutions. We see clearly the economic gains that remain available if the region tackles the long-standing distortions more decisively. Our latest development in the Americas report estimates that if product markets in Latin America and the Caribbean were as competitive as those in advanced economies, GDP per capita could be 11% higher, while inequality would decline. Too many sectors still operate with regulatory and logistical barriers and protect incumbents and prevent productive firms from scaling. This results in weaker investment, lower productivity, and fewer quality jobs, which is why strengthening competition and improving regulation and reducing barriers to entry are among the highest return reforms available to the region. This is where development institutions have an important role to play. At the IDB, our objective is not only to finance projects, but to help countries build the institutional and regulatory conditions that attract investment at scale. Through policy support, technical assistance, and financing, including through IDB Invest, we're working to mobilize private capital into infrastructure, energy, connectivity, digitalization, and productive sectors that can raise long-term growth, because the scale of the challenge exceeds what public resources alone can deliver. So Latin America and the Caribbean has entered this decade with stronger macroeconomic foundations than many expected, and it also enters with a rare combination of strategic assets that the world increasingly values. But this window should not be taken for granted. The next phase for the region will depend less on resilience to shocks and more on the ability to raise productivity, accelerate investment, strengthen institutions, and execute reforms consistently over time. That is ultimately the growth agenda before us. And that is why, and precisely why forums like this one matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Annabelle, for your strong message, and again for the relationship between OECD and Dev that continues to grow from strength to strength. And again, many thanks. It is now my pleasure to invite Mr. Benoît Larrouquis. He's a member of the French National Assembly, representing French citizens in Latin America and the Caribbean. Dear Benoît, over to you.
Estimado señor primer ministro de Perú, dear Mr.
Prime Minister of Peru,
Madame González,
Mathias Cormann,
especial a las
Isabel González, a special and warm welcome to the ministers and excellencies and colleagues present in this forum.
Myself in French and Spanish today. Je suis ravi.
I'm truly delighted to be able to take the floor as a member of Parliament representing the French citizens of Latin America and the Caribbean, which is a constituency that, because of its geography and the issues it has to deal with, is at the heart of the types of discussion that we'll talk about today. It's an honor for me to be here
les liens d'amitié et les
to inter alia celebrate the ties and interests shared by our two regions. Since the first forum for the Latin American and Caribbean region, France, through AFD, has taken part in the organization. We continue to do this, and this highlights the importance that we grant to our partner institutions, the IADB and the OECD, and the Latin American Economic Outlook, the LEO, lies on my bedside table. I do turn to it systematically before going to my constituency. I'll just say that again in Spanish. The LEO is, in a sense, a Bible for me because I turn to it. And in fact, I'm one of its best advocates vis-à-vis the various members of parliament that I meet in my travels. Now, the commitment of the French government is also linked to the AFD's rootedness in the Latin American regions. We've worked to increase our actions in that region. We are one of the biggest bilateral donors in the region, with 17 billion euros committed since 2009. Now, the theme for this edition, this 18th edition, Unlocking Opportunities in a Changing World, requires us to go beyond current upheavals. We all know that the world is undergoing radical transformation, trade and geopolitical tensions, and all this against the backdrop of a climate emergency. In that context, Latin American and the Caribbean region emerges as a strategic actor. It's a region that doesn't just receive development aid, it is above and beyond an important social and development partner for both the economic and climate transitions. The region has huge potential in terms of renewable energy, whether we're talking about solar, wind, or hydroelectric energy sources. It's also a source of critical minerals, and there's 40% of the world's biodiversity there. The region only attracts 5% of investment in clean energy. Mathias Cormann just talked about this. It's one of the challenges that we face. The major challenge is to change the productive structure of the country, increasing and raising productivity levels. The priority that we have is not just to provide support for the region, rather it is to build alliances for sustainable and resilient development. So we need to open up interactions with the private sector and different levels of government. Public development banks are essential partners to be able to provide funding for long-term and high-impact investments in order to be able to reduce risk, restructure markets, and garner private investments towards strategic sectors. In that regard, the AFD Group works closely with public development banks in the region. It also works alongside the Development Centre of the OECD to be able to pinpoint the best way that that cooperation can be channeled vis-à-vis development banks, multilateral development banks, how to garner as many resources of the highest possible quality in favor of development. But beyond the issue of financing, we need a fundamental renewal of the financial architecture, bringing to bear the different parameters, economic and climate. We've talked about this in the recent exchanges that we had in the G7. Our aim must be not just to finance independence, but to bolster and promote autonomy. We've talked about this in different fora.
Una dependencia, pero de impulsar una autonomía.
This means that we have to strengthen local productive capacity, garner domestic resources, and lay the groundwork for the private sector to be able to fully deploy its role. It also means that we have to be rooted in the territories that we're working in, whether we're talking about renewable energies, waste management, mobility, or water management and governance.
L'acceptabilité sociale des projets.
It's important to focus on the acceptability of the projects. This is something that is essential to be able to promote these issues and ensure ownership of these projects and local autonomy. We have initiatives like Global Gateway, which highlight the shift from development aid to development partner with a strategic aim in sight. The idea is to combine different sources of financing such that it's beneficial to both the Latin American Caribbean region and the European basin. In that context, this forum is a clear-cut example of what we can achieve together through cooperation between these different organizations, the IADB, the AFD, and the OECD. We can reach these collective aims. We need to work on clear-cut frameworks with a high level of commitment by governments, by the private sector, and by civil society. And I firmly believe that we can effect this transition, and I commit to continue to working on this. Thank you very much for your attention.
Many thanks, dear Benoit, for these wonderful and strong remarks. And I want to thank you and both the French as well as the French Development Agency, especially for your commitment and strong support to the center and to development, which came very well across in your statement. And I was especially touched by the Leo bedside story. And I can assure you that you will not run out of things to read, because before you leave here today, we will give you a new report, the Caribbean Development Dynamics, that we launched in Trinidad in April. So Juan and Sebastian, you have to help me with this one. Then you will have 2 reports on your bedside table. It's now a great honor to invite all of you to watch a special video message from Her Excellency Ms. Laura Fernandez Delgado, who is the recently elected President of Costa Rica. And allow me as well to take this opportunity to warmly thank Costa Rica, especially for your continued engagement and valued partnership with the center. So without further ado, I think we can watch the video.
Secretary-General, ministers, and leaders of the international community, it is an honor to address you today in the context of the International Economic Forum on Latin America and the Caribbean, which brings us together at a time of economic transformations and major geopolitical challenge. The world is changing. It's changing fast, and that doesn't stop. In this challenging and rapidly evolving context, it will be our own capacity for anticipation that will enable us to act in a timely, visionary and purposeful manner, such that we can try to transform those challenges into opportunities. We've always known that Latin America and the Caribbean is a region with extraordinary potential. We have strategic natural resources for the green and digital transitions. We have renewable energy that already exceeds 60% of our electricity matrix, and we are critical suppliers of food for a world that will be demanding that food more and more. We share language, history, and aspirations. A foundation that provides a robust basis for nurturing a common vision and projecting a collective voice on the global stage. Beyond natural resources, our greatest strength lies in our people. We are a demographically young region with entrepreneurs and innovators who demonstrate the ability to compete in the most demanding markets in the world. We have the creativity to imagine solutions and the determination to implement them. The challenge is to continue building better public policies that create an increasingly conducive environment for talent to proliferate, to grow, to innovate and to lead. This requires concrete reforms to improve the competitivity of our economies, to close finance gaps in energy, digital and logistics infrastructure, and to create the conditions to attract quality investment, to generate formal jobs and to modernize our productive sectors. Costa Rica is committed to that journey, and today I want to encourage you to walk it together with us as OECD members and co-chairs of your regional program. We have worked to make the relationship between Latin America and the Caribbean and this organization closer and more strategic. In our presidency of the Ministerial Council last year, we advanced the strategic framework for Latin America and the Caribbean, the instrument through which OECD members reaffirm at the highest level of political support the relevance of our region to the OECD's global agenda, and we give structure and direction to that commitment. This forum is very much a propitious space for undertaking the objectives that have guided our effort, based on dialogue among peers, on shared evidence, and most importantly, on the political will to act. It is our time to transform this agenda into action. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I trust that my friends here from Costa Rica will relay our deep thank you to Her Excellency Laura Fernández Delgado for these wonderful remarks. And we have seen that the perspectives that have been shared during this first session have underlined both the urgency, other challenges that are facing the region, but also, and this is what I want us to also focus on here today, the opportunities ahead, and many have been identified. And they set a broader, or stage for a broader discussion on how Latin America and the Caribbean can strengthen competitiveness, as it has been mentioned, mobilize investment, and better position itself in a rapidly changing context. And with that in mind, it's time for our first session that is titled Boosting Competitiveness in a Changing Global Context. And it's my great pleasure to invite Anabel Gonzalez to return to the podium to moderate the discussion, and I look forward to listening in. You can come up here if you...
Thank you, Muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos.
Good evening and welcome to this session, Boosting Competitiveness in a Changing Global Context. I would like to call our panelists to the stage, Mr. Pablo Quino, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Trade and Worship of Argentina. Welcome, Pablo.
A la señora Indiana Trejos.
Ms. Indiana Trejos Gallo.
A la señora Indiana Trejos.
Ms. Indiana Trejos Gallo, Minister of Foreign Trade for Costa Rica. Welcome.
Gracias. A la señora Jimena Escobedo.
Ms. Jimena Escobedo Juarez, Undersecretary of Industry and Commerce from Mexico. Welcome. Mr. Oscar Lovera, Minister of Economy and Finance from Paraguay. Welcome, Oscar. And Mr. Gabriel Odone, Minister of Economy and Finance of Uruguay. Welcome, Gabriel. Ministers, thank you very much for joining us in this very timely conversation for Latin America and the Caribbean. I say timely because we have heard how the global economy is rapidly transforming in the face of new opportunities, and how our region of Latin America and the Caribbean is entering into this phase with significant advantages. But we've also heard that there are significant structural restrictions that we'll need to deal with. Competitivity doesn't only depend on cost, but also institutional quality, predictability, innovative capacity, and trust. So we need to seize the opportunities before us. This requires a sustainable reform and a better capacity for implementation. Today we have a very distinguished panel who represent countries that are moving forward along this pathway and that have distinct trajectories. Each present their strengths, their clear and clearly defined policies, and each is forging its own specific way forward, recognizing that quality of reform is very important. The public-private cooperation, the quality of institutions are essential for making the most of the opportunities opening up. We're going to begin this conversation with Argentina. Argentina is undertaking major macroeconomic stabilization and reforms among the most ambitious of the continent. You have rapidly moved forward, opening trade and stabilizing and consolidating the economy, improving conditions, quality of life, and international exchange. In Argentina, in particularly energy, mining, agricultural business, and knowledge-based sectors have been evolving rapidly. The country has great potential to become a significant player in the energy transformation, particularly given its significant resources of lithium. How does the government see the link between the current stabilization agenda and reforms and the competitivity strategy for Argentina in the medium term? And what do you think are the key preconditions for converting the renewed interest of investors in Argentina into productivity gains and widely shared growth? All right, thank you very much, Annabelle, for your question. Thank you very much for inviting us to participate on this panel with so many distinguished colleagues. Argentina, two and a half years ago now, chose to initiate a new road deeply committed to economic renewal. We had a starting point where the economy was in a bad state, and we had to face a very significant lack of credibility, a vital point, a lack of credibility for the Argentinian society as a whole, lack of credibility in the eyes of the international community. Every day we are producing results to counter that effect. Argentina eliminated its budget deficit in a month. It has been pursuing a very significant reform program. It has been significantly regulating in a way that has never been done before in the country. We have a Ministry for Regulation, in fact, specifically dealing with the issue of the regulatory framework. And we focused on strengthening Argentina's international presence, which is intimately connected with its macroeconomic characteristics. So this effort involved strengthening our credibility in the eyes of the rest of the world, ensuring that the economic agents within the country were able to take decisions and face a very predictable way forward. In this sense, Argentina always was rich in natural resources, energy resources, mineral resources. It always had a knowledge-based economy, all of these strengths to its credit. It had human capital that is recognized around the world, business people, civil servants, employees, who distinguished themselves not just in Argentina but around the world. So the question is, what was lacking? What was missing? It was the basic underlying conditions that enabled the country to project itself as or towards international markets. It had a very closed economy. And this is a daily battle to open up the economy. This is what we are working on constantly, to generate that growth that Argentina needed. Argentina produces what the world needs. Argentina needs the world needs Argentina. And so that is what we're focusing on in our external relations, aiming to consolidate our presence in this regard. generating that credibility that we need day by day by day, strengthening our institutions and strengthening access to the world. That is why Argentina's interrelations with the OECD are so important. Thank you, Pablo. Now I'd like to turn to Costa Rica, a country that has built a development model that stands out in the region, opening trade and investment, investing in human capital, focusing on the environment and institutional stability. This goes beyond traditional exports, medical devices, business products and so on. You've been working on the digital transformation and other things. But we know that the next phase for the country is more demanding when it comes to policy, but also when it comes to investment. So looking towards the future, what are the priorities of the Costa Rican government to strengthen value and strengthen internal productivity? And how can Costa Rica guarantee that foreign investment translates into improved investment, improved job creation and quality of life? Well, thank you very much, Annabelle, distinguished panelists. It's a great pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. Thank you very much also for giving me this opportunity to tell you about Costa Rica and how our vision of trade openness and attracting investment has led to a productive transformation and growth in the country. There may be colleagues who have been here at OECD Fora in the past who've heard our story, but we never tire of repeating it. For several decades now, Costa Rica has focused everything on trade openness and development, and this has had a transformative effect in the country. We enabled a major evolution of our exports. From the 1990s, we exported mainly agricultural produce. Some 48% of what we exported to the world now is medical devices and advanced manufacture. This is something that we've achieved thanks to a convergence of elements. We as a country have made that effort, but it is also, with no doubt at all, dependent on human capital as a catalyzing element to attract quality investment into Costa Rica. That is how our economy today has evolved to a very sophisticated economy. I'll give you a few figures to give you an idea. In life sciences, for example, today, that sector employs some 73,000 people, some 50% of whom are women, and Costa Rica is producing 17 productive sectors in the medical device market. We have been developing Tier 1 products, as they're known. We are developing even more sophisticated products now, which are exported virtually everywhere around the world. So let's see how investment has been a catalyst for development in the country. In our free trade zones, we have seen a major effect. They are a key catalyst. Some 15% of our GDP relates to these free trade zones. 50,000 people directly and indirectly work in those zones. All of these figures are very encouraging, but where is Costa Rica heading in the future? Well, we believe that innovation is fundamentally important. We need to continue to invest in our human talent and strengthen local value chains with multinational companies and with the rest of the world. We need to achieve these three things in order to continue growing. In terms of human talent, how does that process unfold? Well, several years ago, we made a major effort to work with the productive sector to determine the needs of those sectors. And this is a continuous exchange with the private sector, with the productive sectors, to really understand the quality of talent that is needed. Upskilling and reskilling are a constant effort because we know that the world is dynamic and constantly changing. Productive units are not static, our sectors are not static, and we need that human talent to be closely aligned with the needs of the productive sectors. We have government alliances with the academic world, both public and private universities. Technical colleges play a fundamental role in our upskilling and reskilling that our workforce is or needs to adapt. And we have been innovating, working very closely with multinational enterprise as well. This is a virtuous spiral for the country. We're doing everything we can to keep growing, to keep attracting foreign investment. As I said, foreign investment has been a productive and a growth catalyst for our country. And that investment has led to more innovation. That increased innovation has increased the quality of our human resources, and having greater talent attracts further investment. So this constant virtuous spiral that leads to a continued growth. Well, thank you very much, Indiana. Now I would like to turn to Mexico, a country which is at a decisive point of its economic trajectory. In terms of its global value chain integration, the country is one of the most attractive destinations for investment in the Western Hemisphere. The country is undergoing a profound transformation as well. You need human capital, you need to work on innovation, human talent and so on. You are supporting the SMEs of the country, which are very dynamic. You are working on value chains. Undersecretary, can you tell us about the innovation in quality, innovation, development of SMEs, and how that has contributed to setting up more competitive and more open industrial ecosystems, not just for Mexico, but for the region as a whole? Right, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a delight to be on the panel with you. Several things to say here. In Mexico's case, but in international terms, there is a major trade reconfiguration underway. This idea of trade is something that we have a clear concept of from the past, but that trade situation, the value chains are no longer what they were. Things are changing very quickly. And so Mexico needed to reconfigure, to rethink its industrial and economic policy. We recognize that need to rethink, to consolidate, to transform. And Mexico is settling itself in as a manufacturing hub, focusing on industrial policy, but we also need to look at what else we can do. We can't just think that we'll be doing the same thing for the next 50 years. We need to think, what are we going to be doing not 5 years from now, but between now and the end of the year, a few months after that, and so on. So what we decided to do was redesign our maps, if you will, the roadmaps forward, and we called that effort the Plan Mexico, the Mexico Plan. We're working on refounding our industrial policy, economic policy. We have three main pillars to that, several others, but one focuses on innovation. In Mexico, we are very clear that we think that economic value, growth, and innovation will not, value chains will not happen without innovation. So we work hand in hand with the private sector, with academia, the government, working with the other major stakeholders. And this is something that has helped us to move forward. The second pillar relates to a national policy. This trade reconfiguration that I was mentioning means that more than ever, it's very important where things are produced, where things are made. So we need to improve our capacity for national production, for domestic production. We need to work hand in hand with the SMEs to bring manufacturing back into Mexico. That is essential. So we all constantly think about how we can add value and how we can build up and strengthen our SMEs hand in hand with them. We have launched a cross-cutting public policy effort to support those small and medium-sized companies. Public and private financing from the Mexican Development Bank, but also from the private banks, the Bank of Mexico, and the various other banking structures in the country, focusing on venture capital as well, something that has not necessarily been a constant in Latin America, but we are focusing on entrepreneurial spirit, on venture capital and support. Also, how we can make sure that innovation and investment is more agile in the country. There are things that we can't control, external forces, but we do have control on certain elements domestically. How we can simplify procedures. We have done a great deal to simplify procedures to enable SMEs to achieve the licensing, the permits, the authorizations that they need. A couple of weeks ago, we announced a new phase of simplification of red tape in the country. We're going to be allowing the entire procedures for setting up companies to be doable within a 30-day period. And all of this is aligned with our effort to simplify tax frameworks with auditing and control and with financing arrangements and so on a local, regional and national basis. Everything that we can do to help SMEs to add value. This is a fundamental part of our refounding of policy. In Mexico, we have also been working on foreign investment, foreign direct investment in the country and focusing on the international connection, but also working very hard to consolidate the domestic markets, providing greater sovereignty for the country in terms of its health structure, clean energy, energy self-sufficiency, constantly adding value as much as we can to enable us to have a greater autonomy in this reconfiguration.
Thank you very much, Jimena. Now I'd like to move on to Paraguay now. Paraguay has been one of the best performing countries in the region in terms of macroeconomic stability and poverty reduction over the past 2 decades, supported by prudent macroeconomic management, expansion of agricultural exports and abundant clean energy supply. The country is now entering a new phase with investment, energy availability, and strategic geographic location. So, Minister Lovera, where do you identify the greatest opportunities for Paraguay to accelerate private sector-led growth over the next few years? And which reforms or investments do you consider to be most critical to ensure that all of these steps that Paraguay has been taking translate into sustained productivity gains and broader economic transformation? Well, thank you very much, Annabelle, for inviting me, and greetings to all of my colleagues. As you've just highlighted, in Paraguay, we have had stability for over 23 years now. But in some cases, we've had to reach rock bottom in order to improve. We had issues with payments and other such issues. So Paraguay has built an economic history over the past 23 years, which has enabled us to achieve greater economic stability and development with a strong national bank, a credible fiscal policy. And we have improved our investment grade as a result of this. But we understand that stability is not sufficient when it comes to yielding the outcomes we wish to see and the Paraguay which we deserve. We recognize and we're aware that private sector involvement is essential to ensure sustained economic development in the future. So we've identified 4 sectors where there are opportunities currently in Paraguay. Agro-industry and food chain supplies. We produce food for 100,000 people with over 6 million inhabitants in the country. So in terms of production, initially we were producing raw cereals and meat, but today we're looking at a more value-added industry, which would involve processed products and not just raw materials. Another opportunity we see is in the area of energy. We have an abundance of clean energy through a hydroelectric supply, and this will enable us to set up industries across Paraguay, not just energy-intensive ones, but today, increasingly, we're looking at, for example, computing centers, data centers, which will offer a greater level of services to Paraguay, and it will enable us to better use our inputs. We're also focusing on greater manufacturing and industry activities. For several years now, we've been introducing measures which have yielded significant outcomes, and the export value for our country has increased 7-fold over the past 12 years in this area. So this has had a meaningful impact for the economy of our country. Paraguay is also, in terms of its position, a strategic country for the Mercosur area. We've also been looking at reforms, for example, logistical investment in infrastructure with the Paraná-Paraguay corridor, as well as the Oceanic corridor. And one of the major challenges I would highlight is human capital, ensuring the human capital is available in order to seize the demographic opportunities of our young population. We need to train and prepare the future generations to lead our country in the years to come. Thank you very much, Oscar. I'd now like to come back to Uruguay. Uruguay has built a solid reputation for institutional quality, macroeconomic credibility, the rule of law, policy predictability. And in recent years, it has also positioned itself as one of the region's leaders in digital government, innovation policy, and the adoption of advanced digital public infrastructure. It serves as an important platform to attract investment in technology-intensive sectors and expand higher value-added services. At the same time, sustaining growth and competitiveness in a small economy requires constant adaptation. Therefore, Minister Odone, could you share the government's vision for the next stage of Uruguay's competitiveness and international positioning? And could you tell us how reforms in areas such as innovation, digital transformation, regulatory modernization and skills development can strengthen Uruguay's role as a reliable, high-standard economy which is increasingly connected to global knowledge and technology networks? Well, thank you very much, Annabelle. And I thank my colleagues who've spoken before me. Within the political system in Uruguay, and not just our government, we believe that our strategy transcends our political differences. As my Mexican colleague has mentioned, there has been a history of transition in 3 phases. First of all, the global transformation with artificial intelligence and digital technologies, which has an impact on our social protection systems, and that's a major challenge. We also have challenges in the area of climate change, which has a significant impact when it comes to managing natural disasters, but also preparing and recovering from these situations. We're moving towards a renewable energy sector in order to prepare for this. And we have also had a great deal of consensus over the past few decades, but today that is changing. The middle classes in the West are all questioning the systems that have been in place until now. So when it comes to the circulation of capital and humans, the issue has become controversial. Now, our country is a country which focuses on social aspects, and therefore it's a major challenge. Over the past decades, we have seen different governments passing through, but we're looking at diversifying in terms of risks and moving away from economic instability, as well as addressing the mainly export-oriented economy. Most of our investments today come from China, and we are significant importers of services from the United States. The EU is also a major donor. So all of these issues highlight that diversification is key, and this has been the case for some time now, with a macro vision which is being introduced. Over the past 4 decades, we've been looking at these issues, and we've been improving our stability at macroeconomic level, which in turn has improved institutional credibility, and this has enabled us to increase competitiveness. But this is not sufficient, as has been mentioned by my colleague from Paraguay. If we do not improve work, productivity, and investment capacity, it's very unlikely we will be increasingly competitive. We have great potential for energy production, but we have major challenges still ahead of us. Uruguay has been able to take on a full energy transition. In fact, 98% of our electricity came from renewable energy last year. So this is a drastic shift, and 20 years ago, such a shift would have had a major impact on our economy. But what we have to focus on now, as I mentioned earlier, is human capital and attracting international investment. We have agreements underway with the European Union, and we're looking at public policies, public standards, and improving our fiscal framework. All of these are critical when it comes to our public policies. How do we improve our standards in order to continue generating fiscal sustainability, macroeconomic conditions that are conducive, and driving economic development to foster investment in an uncertain world? Thank you very much, Gabrielle. One of the interesting things I take away from what we've heard from all speakers today is the importance of mobilizing the private sector. We don't have much time left, but I'd like to ask each and every one of you what or which priority actions should be taken in your country to seize the opportunities of private sector investment. Pablo, you have the floor first. Thank you very much. In the case of Argentina, and following the legacy that we've inherited, there are 3 pillars here. First, the macroeconomic level. Second, the entire process in the area of regulation has led to the unlocking of resources which were previously tied in Argentina towards the private sector, allowing that sector to invest, to recruit, and to fully realize its potential. And this is something which in Argentina was not happening until now. Now, we also have novel approaches. For example, we have an incentive program in order to rebalance our fiscal system and prioritize investments which have yields that go beyond the political cycle. So we're looking at a different time frame compared to usual approaches, and we are hoping that this will lay the groundwork for a stable future. This is what we're focusing on. This is a process which will enable Argentina to integrate the international market. We are working on agreements with the EU, with Singapore, and we're also involved in the accession process to the OECD. We're also working with Canada, the United States, and all of this has meant that a country which was previously very closed off in terms of its long-term economic perspectives, with the legacy of very aggressive policies in the past, has now a different perspective in sight. We've been focusing on small and medium enterprises, and we're also looking at higher level investments for bigger companies. So that's what I have to say about Argentina. Thank you very much, Pablo. Indiana, what are the priorities of Costa Rica when it comes to mobilizing private sector investment? Well, first of all, we have to listen to them. But yes, we have to work to ensure that exports and foreign investment is stepped up. We have already been taking measures to ensure that rules and institutionality are upheld. But in parallel, we also have to introduce reforms. In Costa Rica, for example, we need to undertake an electricity reform. We have a law which was introduced several years ago. 96% of our energy is actually renewable, and we have growth forecasts for energy over the next 15 years, which would require producing 45% more energy than we produce currently. So we need to look at the state-owned companies' role in this. This is a discussion we're having at the moment. And we need to be listening to local companies as well as foreign investors. Now, we've all highlighted the fact that we're facing a challenging, complex world with a reshaping of global value chains. And countries such as Costa Rica and other countries in the region have great opportunities ahead of them. What we need to do now is to see how we can harness the complementarities of our region and to present ourselves on the global stage as an opportunity for investment in services and goods. And we need to harness all of the capacities we have in the region to achieve this. Thank you very much, Indiana. Jimena, priorities for Mexico. Well, recently we launched the single window for investment, which means that any investment within a development hub over $100 million, or in strategic sectors such as pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, etc., can be fast-tracked in order to have quick access to authorizations with support from the government. This is a single track window which is overseen by the Ministry of the Economy. We also have strong fiscal incentives underway, one of which is the Plan Mexico with immediate credits, focusing on clean energy, etc. And we also have fiscal incentives which are granted if countries settle within one of the development hubs of the country. We have also launched the foreign trade single window. We have 3 departments which are working on this, but we've been able to pool all of these activities together when it comes to export authorizations from our country. We've also been organizing roundtables with strategic sectors, which are held weekly, to discuss with foreign investors how we can bring about added value, how we can address matters related to investment in these strategic sectors. And all of this facilitation is being done in the area of digitization as well. And today, around 50% of the government procedures have been fast-tracked and simplified. We have a health authority in Mexico, just to give you an example, which last month was able to achieve 100% digitalization and simplification of its procedures with immediate authorizations, which previously took 6 months, now taking 7 days. So we're really focusing on our digital infrastructure and simplifying all of the procedures for companies in Mexico. And we want this to be for foreign companies as well, foreign investors as well as local investors and companies. Thank you very much. Oscar, what are the priorities for Paraguay? Well, following the first round of investment in 2024, the government reviewed 2024, the speaker corrects himself. We reviewed the rules for involving the private sector. And 2024 was a year in which we introduced a series of reforms. For example, the law for incentivizing investments and the updating of the law that focused previously on agreements relating to goods, but now focuses on services. Then we also have a law on private investment with a focus on private initiatives and the identification of strategies that can be high impact. We've also been working on a law for concessions, and we've been focusing on private-public partnership in order to address bottlenecks, which have been described here in the area of administrative processes. In many cases, bureaucracy becomes a disincentive for private sector engagement when they decide to invest due to delays in response, due to delayed procedures for authorizations. And we're also undertaking a simplification process using digital technologies, platforms, and web pages. So we have started along this journey, and we also understand that investors are becoming more attracted to our country, and they will have expectations, and hopefully they'll meet a very conducive environment for investment nowadays. Thank you. Gabrielle. Thank you. Well, 3 factors. First of all, capacity to invest. Second, access to market. And third, opportunities. The first focuses on macroeconomic aspects. We have the lowest inflation in years. And then we also have to look at fiscal aspects. We need to be resilient to external shocks. We have to ensure financial redistribution. We also need fiscal sustainability. Today, our country stands out in Latin America in terms of investment and investment grade, which has been improved over the past few decades. We have a very small country with limited access to global markets. Second, as I mentioned, global markets, we need to work with Mercosur, the EU and other partners, as well as initiatives within the region, inter alia Mercosur. And the most important aspect is political stability and ensuring that regardless of who's in government in Uruguay, laws are upheld, institutions work effectively. This is something which we have been highlighting as critical. But beyond these opportunities, we need frameworks for attracting investment with schemes that have been in place for many years now. We need to look at tax aspects and attracting greater investment in specific sectors. We will be working closely with the OECD, also working with the IMF to achieve partnerships, as well as working bilaterally with certain countries in the areas of artificial intelligence or spatial industry. So capacity, access to the market and diversification. I believe all of these aspects will be key for Uruguay in the future. Thank you very much, Gabrielle. I have to close this panel by stating that someone such as myself, who's been working in public policy for years, for me, it's a pleasure to sit beside these representatives who come from different perspectives and different backgrounds, but there are some common takeaways from what I've heard. Macroeconomic stability is essential, but it's not everything. We also need conducive environments. We need to address regulation. We need clear rules, predictability. We also need policies for innovation, human talent, etc., as well as access to markets. We've also heard the importance of mobilizing the private sector in order to attract investment and development that our countries desire to see. So Latin America and the Caribbean today is a region of great hope because of these significant reforms and the scale thereof. We would like to thank all of the ministers who've been here today, and I will be handing over to my colleague Raga, who will now be starting the second session of this International Forum for Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you. Great to meet you. I'm in everyone's way. Thank you. So I can start? Hello again. Could I please ask people to, first of all, stay in the room, of course. Second of all, take your seats, please, because if you thought this was a good panel, which I thought it was, excellent panel. Thank you, Annabelle, for the great moderation. I can guarantee that the next one will be at least as good. Now I've started a competition. I would like to start by inviting my dear panelists to come to the stage. First, Your Excellency Felipe Chapman, the Minister of Economy and Finance from Panama. Mr. Federico Cuello. I have to learn this. Cuello. He is the coordinator, Presidential Commission for the OECD and Foreign Policy Advisor from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Dominican Republic. Here is Federico, and you're here, Minister, here. Next up, Felix Fenner-de-Shaw. He is the Director for Latin America, the Caribbean, and relations with all overseas countries and territories in the European Commission at DG INPA. And I notice it now that I'm introducing these distinguished gentlemen. It's the three Fs, Felipe, Federico, and Felix. So we go to the M's. Michelle Muscat, she is my good friend and Assistant Secretary-General, Assistant Administrator, and Director of the Regional Bureau for Latin America and the Caribbean at the UNDP. Then we have Naomi Espinosa Madrid, who is the Secretary-General of the Association of Caribbean States. Welcome. And last but not least, Clara Furlan, Head of International Partnerships and Public Affairs from HDF Energy. Welcome. And I feel like Spice Girls with interpretation in one and the microphone in the other. So I wonder if I can sit down here. But here we are with 6 stellar panelists, and this is building on what we have been hearing, the messages that have come very clear and very solid throughout the day. Enormous potential, but we need investment, we need innovation, we need international cooperation. This has been the repeated message here all day, and that is sort of paving the way for our discussion here, which is going to be on mobilizing finance to unlock development opportunities across the region, both the Latin America and the Caribbean. And as we have been saying here as well, the conversation couldn't be more timely. We have substantial financing needs within the region, and it needs to accelerate growth, strengthen infrastructure, advance the green and digital transitions, and build resilience to climate and other shocks, whether they're economic or others. And this is all happening while public resources remain constrained, making it essential to mobilize private capital and to strengthen international partnerships. And that's exactly the aim of the game here today. We will aim to have the discussion help us explore exactly that, how governments, international organizations, DFIs, and the private sector can work together to unlock this potential. So this is sort of the backdrop to this, and the session will be in the same format as before. Each panelist will get 1 question, about 5 minutes for the first intervention, and then we'll see how we're doing on time for a follow-up question or a final reflection. So I am not going to say anything more and use any more of our time, but dive straight into the discussion, beginning here with His Excellency Felipe Chapman, the Minister of Economy and Finance of Panama, a country that I have visited twice in the sphere of 1 year, and the Leo was praised here earlier in the opening ceremony, and we had a presentation there at an event. So the Leo is famous now in Panama. But Minister Chapman, you bring to this discussion a great deal of experience in economic policy, public finance, and Panama continues to play an important role in the region as a regional hub for trade, for investment, and connectivity. So from a finance ministry perspective, what are the key conditions that are needed to attract private capital into strategic sectors while maintaining fiscal stability, of course?
Thank you, Rada. May I start by mentioning how we value the Latin American economic outlook. It's a good source that we appreciate. I have the advantage of coming from a world previously of understanding and living capital markets, financial and economic analysis. The disadvantage is still cultivating patience in how not too fast the public sector moves. So you have to combine both. When you mention private investment, and why so? In an economy like Panama, and probably most of you know, more than 80% of employment comes from the private sector. So there's no way the public sector can fulfill if there is a vacuum. And actually, there's an extremely painful example of that, and it was the pandemic. In the pandemic, the Panamanian economy contracted in a probably never seen historically before, and the public sector didn't have the capability of filling up that gap. So there is very recent experience of proving that. I would sum it up with three elements. You have to somehow produce trust, and trust. Three key elements. How do you do that? In an economy, first, you have to stabilize the economy, then accelerate its growth. You have to put up your financial house in order. That's the fiscal area. We believe we have done both at a point where our premium risk has decreased over 63% in less than 2 years. And that's quite important, not only just for public finances, but for public investment. Why so? Because when you calculate the cost of funding, when you do the calculation of the weighted average cost of capital, the sovereign risk weight has a very important weight in that. And that's the trigger to make or not to make a given investment, especially strategic investments. So you have to create the ecosystem in terms of producing not only the trust in the rule of law, in institutions, and to have the right view or a plan for the future, but also that you have the fundamentals, the financial fundamentals that can actually make the numbers work. So we believe we're doing so. And another part, I remember I was in a forum in a Panama Day in Madrid, and this one of the things I'll never forget. It's like a big investor approached me and said, "Minister, in life you have to do your job well, but you have to tell the story well. You're doing the first, start doing the second. That's why I'm here." And even though you have to do the task to attract the private investments, which is extremely important, you have to also try to attract the right private investment. Panama has never had a problem of attracting investments. Yet the challenge is to bring the best profile of investors that you want, especially the ones that understand where the world is going, in a world which is changing extremely fast, in a world that there's not only uncertainty but unpredictability, and have the ability to adapt quite fast. and not only includes technology like AI, but also understand the geopolitical events that can complicate life. In the case of Panama, it has become luckily an opportunity. The Panama Canal becomes more competitive in situations like that. You don't know who you're working for, but and then there you go. You start seeing how the world is moving, and then you have to attract the private investment that actually understands that needs that appreciates that, and why so? To produce employment and to translate that into economic human development. But at the end of the day, it's all about people. How do we improve the people? Is to have the best indicators and to have a poor quality of life, doesn't say anything. So at the end of the day, it's just about people. It's how do we focus to produce our results, and even if and that's painful because some of the results you don't see them in a very short time. But eventually, people are going to realize it, that their life changed with decisions made way before.
Mm. That's very interesting, and also what you said about tell the story, because people need to know. Yeah. No, it's been very impressive to work with Panama during my time here, and now as of the last couple of years to see the ambition that the government oozes to do even better. So it's a wonderful thing to see. Thank you very much. Now let me turn to another country that has been a very active member of the OECD Development Centre, and which is also strengthening its ties with the OECD, and that's why they made sure that Federico Cuello, who was the made him the coordinator, just to make sure that everything would go according to plan. Right. The coordinator of the Presidential Commission for the OECD and Foreign Policy Advisor in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Dominican Republic. Federico, the challenge in many countries, it's not just financing. It's building the institutional capacity to prepare, structure, and to implement projects. How is the Dominican Republic handling this, strengthening the conditions needed to mobilize investment and to ensure that it delivers development results? And how can international partnerships and how can the OECD and the OECD Development Centre support you in this?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Raga Árnadóttir.
Oh, very good.
Cuello Árnadóttir.
Yeah.
Very good. It's an honor to be here, surrounded by this distinguished panel of members, and the preceding panel was extraordinary as well. So it's really a privilege to be here. I prepared a long speech of 3 pages, which I am happy to leave for the record. It's in Spanish. But
sorry to interrupt. I am the only non-Spanish speaker. Yes. If you want to speak Spanish, sí, claro.
Podemos hablar en español, es verdad. Pero me he sentido muy estimulado por la discusión del primer panel.
I found the previous discussion in the panel very interesting and thought-provoking.
Para el récord.
I'll just leave the speech that I'd sent in for the record, and I wanted to talk about the kinds of things that we need to confront as a region. We have a number of resources. We're very rich in resources, not just for today's world, but for tomorrow's world. So it's really important that we be able to develop these value chains. And we have to be aware as a region of the time in which we live. We are living in a time of change towards the 4th industrial revolution. And we can talk about this in terms of artificial intelligence and other parameters, but the entire productive basis of Latin America, which represented a high cost in terms of creating the right conditions for incentives, investments, and now things are fundamentally changing because we've got roboticization of a number of manufacturing processes. So everything that we've done today and to date could completely disappear in the years to come. How are we going to face this? How are we going to ensure that we can draw in the investments that we need to continue to promote economic development? And we have to speak with conviction, and I have to I'm sure you've seen this in the Dominican Republic. We removed the licenses for mining gold in one of the provinces of the Dominican Republic because of the huge environmental impact that this would represent. And it would notably have contaminated the water. It's clear that the critical minerals that are in Latin America and that we all need, and we have a whole spate of them, whether it's ferrous products or lithium and other rare metals. And all of this has to be balanced with the environments in which we live, and notably the natural reserves and protected areas that we have. You have to manage this as intelligently as possible. I think we have to turn to the example provided by Gulf countries. These didn't draw in foreign investments. In order to be able to do it, they created real partnerships. And the populations in these countries are shareholders in these processes. So this leads to a very different outcome. When there is a personal benefit for all those who live in those communities, who can draw on the benefits of mining exploitation, and if you do this in a sustainable manner, and that is the major challenge, without having a negative impact on the environment, that's the best possible way to operate. And this is what we should do in Latin America. We should bear in mind that we need to rely on resources rather than robots or algorithms. And so we really need to be able to look into the future to be able to deal with these. And if you think about the WTO ministerial that was held in 2001, when I arrived as an ambassador in 2019, it was amazing to see what they had managed to achieve. We have to do the same thing today. And there's another aspect that I'd like to underline, and this is linked to the kind of inspiration that we can draw on from Korea in terms of quality education, in terms of capacity for innovation. But if there's something that we still haven't done, and the Undersecretary of State for Mexico actually pointed to this in the last session, is we really have to focus on our national assets, on the national basis for productive output that we can have. And we need to be able to focus on added value in our processing chains. We need to be able to do that because it will benefit the majority as well. And unfortunately, this is a huge challenge for my country, the Dominican Republic. And I hope that in the context of what we're going to be able to do with the OECD, we're running a program that's very ambitious with an action plan with 24 projects. There are different aspects to this, variables linked to education, infrastructure, and millions of investment in euros, and we hope that with that we'll be able to tackle the challenges that we face. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Federico, and I can assure you that we can't wait here at the OECD to start working on these on the implementation, on the projects that you were mentioning, and we look forward to being your partner in this, to bringing you even closer. Of course, you're very close to the Development Centre, which the next panelist, Felix Fernandez-Shaw, is as well. He's the director for Latin America and the Caribbean at the European Commission's Directorate General for International Partnerships, INPA. The EU has, for a long time, been a strategic partner for Latin America and the Caribbean, and plays a central role in advancing investment, sustainable infrastructure, and global gateway partnerships all across the region. So, Felix, what has the EU-LAC Global Gateway Investment Agenda achieved so far? Now we want to hear about results, and what is needed to unlock its full potential.
Thank you very much, Raga, for inviting the European Union here today. And as we have already decided with Federico, I'm also going to speak in Spanish, since I don't have that many occasions to do it in the place I live. Pero muchas gracias.
Well, so thank you. Thank you very much to the OECD. Thank you for inviting us as representatives of both the European Union and the Latin American Caribbean region. I completely agree with what Federico said in terms of inclusion. And if you look at the summit in 2023 between the EU and the LATAM Caribbean region, it's really important to increase and raise productive output, to add value, to increase processing. This is something that was highlighted by different ministers, Minister of Costa Rica, Minister of Uruguay, and so on and so forth. And I think that this added value needs the relevant technology transfers, needs investment in skills and education. And it's also linked to issues of infrastructure. The European Union highlighted a number of different priorities in the Community of Latin American Caribbean States Summit. And this highlights notably problems which are rife in the European Union as well, which is electricity grid interconnection. This is important to issue stable provision of energy and this is true specifically of a region which is one of the greenest in the world. And the issue of industrialization, of higher investment, and what was just referred to in terms of robots and algorithms, it's going to be essential to draw on the critical minerals that Latin America is rich in. It's going to be important to be able to ensure renewable energy provision in Latin America, but we won't be able to do that without a proper infrastructure, notably in electricity. So the first thing that we're doing in this regard is not just focusing on the regional electricity markets in the region. We're focusing on developing the different regions, but we're also focusing on interconnectivity of the different grids with, for example, Panama and other areas. We're also focusing on technologies that we see in the European Union as heralding the future, moving away from fossil fuels. We're investing in Colombia, Brazil, Uruguay, and Paraguay, where we're going to have the first green hydrogen investment. That's a high amount of investment that's being brought to bear by the European Commission and the European Union. And of course, the IABD and the European Investment Bank. We're therefore working on the critical minerals issue. We all know here that Latin America is incredibly rich in these critical rare minerals, and everybody in Latin America continues to say this day in, day out as well. But it's essential to ensure that they move along a supply chain, and it's important to be able to have good governance of that supply chain. So we're working with Brazil, with Chile, to ensure that we can diversify those supply chains, but we're also focusing on working with different countries to provide added value, for example, with Bolivia and Brazil, so that you can increase the value of the supply chain from Latin America to Europe, to the European Union notably. And then there's digital cooperation with the Digital Alliance between the EU and Latin America. You've got the LAC, which joins up the EU and Latin America. And we also want to carry through the different projects that we have for connectivity and what we're going to be able to do in the medium term in the Caribbean region. We consider that energy and digitalization are going to be the two pillars of the economy of the future. And so to be able to ensure that that is the case, we have to have solid infrastructure that is laid down in a sustainable manner. We also have to work integrating people into those equations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Felix, for that interesting account. And this is the second time that the focus is on people. Federico, you mentioned that, Felipe, sorry, it's the 3 Fs. Yeah, but so we're getting one common thread here that we have to that we cannot forget, and that is we're doing this all this is because we're trying to make people's lives better with, in our case, better policies and good partnership. So that is the intro to Michel Mousquet, who was here in Paris last week, presenting the UNDP Human Development Report, and which focuses a lot on people as well. But Michel, my question to you is the following. Latin America and the Caribbean faces, as we've been talking about, significant financing gaps in areas that are critical for sustainable development. You know, we've been talking about infrastructure and energy to digitalization to everything that Felix was mentioning here through the Global Gateway. From UNDP's perspective, what are the main barriers preventing available capital from translating from that to development impact? And how can multilateral institutions and initiatives such as the LAC facility that I'm sure you will tell us about help bridge that gap? And just before you answer, I wanna praise the LAC facility that you have been promoting from UNDP, and of course we at the Centre are delighted to be your partners and look forward to taking that forward. Over to you, Michel.
Buenas tardes a todas.
Good afternoon to everyone.
Thank you, not just for the question, for bringing the human perspective to this conversation that should be always at the center, but also for having UNDP as part of this important International Economic Forum focused on Latin America and the Caribbean. Saludo a todos y todas las panelistas.
And hello to all the panelists, and notably Minister Chapman from Panama, because I'm also from Panama. Well, it's very clear to me, Raga, from listening not just to what people have said in this panel, but in the opening session, the first session as well, and in terms of talking about the challenges in financing the development of our region. These challenges, let me say, are development challenges, financing challenges, but also political challenges in essence. And having listened to the various interventions, as you said, Annabelle, it's very clear to me that there is capital, there's public investment possibility, but there's also private sector crowding capital that can be brought to bear. And this is true in the region, and it's one of the things that we can highlight in a forum of this kind. Again, ambition is there, and this is very clear from what I've heard from the different people who have taken the floor today, and it's important to have political will and commitment to be able to carry this through. And I think there's a lot of accumulated experience in the region, which gives us the capacity to innovate, deploying different financing tools. And in the UNDP, we see this. We see that the Latin American and Caribbean region is a kind of laboratory from which other regions can draw lessons. And we also have higher institutional capacity for innovation. This really stands out today. It's very clear to me as well that the challenge that we have today is also linked to fragmentation. And because of a fragmentation or heterogeneity of different initiatives, actions, and so on. And it's important to ensure that different countries are investment ready to be able to draw in investment. And so there's this issue of strengthening capacity. I wanted to think about this facilitating aspect as well notably in terms of the Latin American and Caribbean regions. There's the issue of predictability, stability, and trust in institutions. But at the end of the day, what we're talking about is effective and efficient governance. And there are a number of characteristics that are unique to Latin American and Caribbean region. We have a fundamental asset in the region to be able to build on this future, to be able to build the groundwork for that investment, to be able to move forward with development and to channel the different investments. And I'm talking about democracy. The region is the most democratic in the world, and it is the one that can really translate these ambitions in concrete development actions on the ground, despite the major challenges that we all know we face. 4 out of 5 people in the region today live in countries where leaders have been democratically elected, even though some of these democracies face a number of challenges. And this should really be at the center of any conversation that we have about creating an incentive or a framework that is favorable to investment, notably for countries that will invest there from elsewhere in the world. Now, despite the fact that we are the most democratic region, we still have to face a number of different challenges, and these are very specific to our times. Pressure is brought to bear on those democracies, both internally in terms of the way that they consolidate themselves, but it's also because these are imperfect by nature. But this is also linked to our development trajectory and highlighted by the huge inequalities that some of these countries face in social and economic terms. But there's also inequality in terms of political clout, political influence in these different countries. And so these pressures are really pressures of our time, and they really need to be dealt with by generations of today and the future. And also, in that regard, I would highlight the fact of polarization, which is becoming more and more prevalent. And this has a number of different consequences in terms of the kinds of decisions that you can take in terms of medium-term or longer-term policies beyond just electoral cycles. And so this is something that is very worrying, and it's not just an issue of development, but it's something that could even undermine the democratic institutions which I highlighted in the first place. And this is linked to the triple planetary crisis that we face. We are the most biodiverse in the region, and I've said this in the past with great pride, and it's true. However, we're also the region where biodiversity loss is going at the fastest pace. So we really have to be watchful of these different factors and pressures. And this has an impact on the redistribution of power. And it creates tension, and it creates a lack of trust in institutions by citizens. And so this brings me on to my next point, which is the development framework, which we were referring to. So there is empirical evidence to highlight the fact that democracy is the best way of moving development forward. However, I'd like to raise the following question. What kind of development are we talking about? Are we talking about expanding capacities, or are we talking about agency and freedom of citizens to live the life they choose? In that context, there is no other political system that could really herald that promise to continue to defend freedom and rights, the individual rights as democracy. And so we have to think about these different pressures. We're coming from a trajectory where we have constant improvement. In this regard, we now have moved to being a region with more middle classes, and notably, we talked about the impact of the pandemic. Minister, the Latin American region lost the most ground in terms of the achievements that it had made, and this is something.
So that will make a more resilient region. We need the capacity to resist a shock, to overcome it, and to continue moving forward. Annabelle also mentioned something in her intervention which goes well beyond increasing productivity, and that is that organizing principle around which Latin America and Caribbean development policies need to coalesce. And that resilience is the key word here. Resilience in human development. It's impossible to build without productivity being a central element, but building that productivity in the most unequal region in the planet has some basic elements to it. Poverty remains a challenge, but it is a challenge of a third of the people of the region who are living in vulnerability. We don't know what the next shock will be, but we know that it's coming. We have a population that, if they can overcome poverty, they will be able to overcome those shocks and be able to move forward. So that is something that we need to work on for at least half of the population of the region. 3 fundamental dimensions need to be interconnected when we talk about investment and the potential for financing in Latin America. The connection between human development, democracy, and state capacity. Not something as external to the financing ecosystem, but as a central part of that infrastructure in which we need finance, we need funding in order to break out of that triangle, move into a virtuous circle that gives us tangible progress in development and that ends up providing the necessary conditions. Otherwise, we will not bring together the necessary conditions to move forward. So this is something that we need to make sure happens. It's a two-way street between investment and the necessary conditions. In Seville, in the 4th development of funding for development, we talked about this. First of all, we need to break away from the fragmentation that affects the region. We need to draw on that power, that potential of the region, conceive of Latin America and the Caribbean as a platform to map and connect the different initiatives and achieve effects of scale using resilience as an organizing principle that helps us to build that shared vision of development across the region. At the same time, this guarantees that we have the necessary expertise throughout the cycles of the ecosystem of investment. We have a network of experts that's been set up to provide support for the earliest stages of the development of projects, to provide those conditions in projects that will attract investment, that will build those necessary conditions, that will help us to de-risk. We will have insurance tools, we will have other tools, other financing mechanisms that will enable us to pursue those projects. And I'll just conclude. This will also be an accelerator of what was presented in terms of the global gateway in the region, something that we're putting on the table in that important discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. It's always it's so inspiring to listen to you, and this brings me to our meeting last week, and back to I'm picking the words that I'm hearing repeated. You talked about trust, and we talked about that on was it Friday? Trust in institutions. It's not enough to have the democracy. You need to have the trust of the population to be able to implement policies. And we spoke about domestic resource mobilization and taxation and tax morale and all of this. So this excuse me. This goes back to the word trust, which is on my list now for the takeaways. But now, excuse me, I would like to turn to Noemi Espinosa Madrid. She is the Secretary-General of the Association of Caribbean States, and the ACS, of course, plays a vital role in strengthening regional cooperation and promoting sustainable development throughout the Greater Caribbean. And I heard you this morning describing the sort of the outreach of your organization, but in a context where some countries in the Greater Caribbean continue to face high debt burdens and limited fiscal space. How can regional cooperation, such as your institution and financial institutions, help mobilize investments that respond to the region's development priorities and to people's needs? And what role can ACS play in this? I know it's a long question for 5 minutes, but I know you can do it.
I promise I will. Thank you very much, Raga and the OECD, for inviting me to this panel, and to my fellow panelists. It's an honor to join you.
So I will take advantage of the opportunity to speak Spanish as well. To begin, we can't really talk about the Greater Caribbean without talking about multidimensional vulnerability. We all know the shrinking fiscal space. My Spanglish gives me away, but we all know that that's a problem in the region. Climate vulnerability that particularly affects the Greater Caribbean, the special vulnerability that we have. Many of our countries are also considered mid-level income countries as well. So that's why I talk about a multi-dimensional vulnerability. Fortunately, as you also know, in Seville last year, in the Financing for Development Conference, we talked about this issue. We have the instrument now to address these multi-dimensional vulnerabilities. We have a way of measuring that phenomenon across these countries. The UNDP has mentioned this. Some of the other panelists, and even those of the previous panel, have mentioned that we need to focus on the well-being of human beings, of our people. Economic and fiscal policy, development policy, and so on can only really have a true benefit when they aim to increase the well-being of the population. They can't be successful without that. The minister from Panama mentioned all of this as the president of the Association of Caribbean States. We need to look at the situation of the Caribbean states. Not everybody knows who we are and what characterizes us. Our association, ACS, is an intergovernmental organization that has the capacity to contribute to development of the Great Caribbean and beyond. We have the various states and territories that are found in the Caribbean Sea and all of the Central American countries, all of the islands, even overseas territories of France, the Netherlands. Major countries like Mexico, Colombia, and Venezuela are also members. So I always like to point that out because there is enormous potential in the possibility of regional integration, as we said this morning, which really does integrate all of those countries, that there should be shared projects among these countries, that there should be a trade between these countries. That's a real response in development terms. The ACS has two mandates. First of all, implementing projects, and that's something that I feel is very important for achieving development and for really meeting the needs of the populations, because those projects, by definition, must be multi-country projects. We will only consider a project when it is multinational. It might involve English-speaking island, a French-speaking country, Central American and South American countries. Projects really need that diversity of country representation to be pursued in the ACS. Diversity is one of our great strengths. So these projects are multi-country projects, and they deal with the various issues that are priority issues for us. In Dubai of February this year, we had the ECS Future Initiatives event. It's a project ecosystem focused on issues like sargassum, the seaweed that blooms in the sea. Felix mentioned that. This is, I know that he works a lot on sargassum, and we had that conference in Mexico talking about the issue. Caribbean states are offering alliances in the context of that Mexican conference. Sargassum is something which doesn't specifically affect Barbados, the coast of Mexico, the Dominican Republic. It is something that's common to the region, proliferating in the Caribbean Sea. Corals are another issue that we share, the protection of the broader framework of the ocean ecosystem of the Caribbean. Other priorities For example, the Dominican Republic has a number of initiatives concerning connectivity, because if we can achieve better connectivity in the region, then a number of the things that the panel before this mentioned are improved. The imports of goods from other regions into the Greater Caribbean will function a great deal better with that involvement of the 5 countries and regions there. The Grand Caribbean has a great deal to offer. I say this a lot. It's a region with great human capacity, with unprecedented nature, and investing in the Caribbean is investing in the well-being of the planet as a whole. The countries of the Great Caribbean benefit, but it goes well beyond their borders. So I would invite you to consider the Caribbean region as a place where you can invest to improve the well-being of our peoples and our ocean, but also to have knock-on benefits for the rest of the world as well. Thank you.
Now, Noemi, for underlining the importance of the international cooperation and the collective approach. And we have here heard from the public sector, we have heard from international organizations, and now it's time for the private sector. And it's my pleasure to welcome Clara Furlan. She is the head of international partnerships and public affairs at HDF Energy, and we've been talking a lot about, and especially in Felix's intervention, about investments needed in energy infrastructure. And HDF Energy is actively engaged in advancing innovative clean energy solutions with growing relevance, as we have heard, for Latin America and the Caribbean's much needed energy transition. So my question to you, Clara, is about the challenges. What are the unique challenges to scaling renewable energy up in LAC, and how does HDF, that your model, help address it? And then maybe to get you to reflect how, what role multilateral and national development institutions play in this regard. It's all about partnerships again. The microphone's not. Do you have another one too? Yeah. Great.
Thanks. Thank you. It's an honor to be here, distinguished panelists, distinguished attenders, and thank you to the OECD, especially for giving the floor to the private sector. So HDF Energy is a French company developing green hydrogen power plants to produce renewable, non-intermittent electricity using hydrogen as a medium storage. We are a developer, and our main solution provides clean, dispatchable energy 24/7 worldwide. We are talking about innovation, technological innovation, for the production and the consumption locally in the Latin American and Caribbean countries, where we are developing the project, like French Guiana, Barbados, and Mexico, for example. We have a pipeline under development of in more than 20 countries, representing an investment of $3 billion. As you can imagine, HDF won't invest in the entire pipeline alone. This is where the role of multilateral and national development institutions is crucial. I'll get back to this in a minute, but first I'd like to answer your question about the challenges that we faced in the region. We are facing several challenges in addition to the challenges faced by the energy sector, like the intermittency, grid instability. We are facing issues common to the private sectors. If I talk about the financing challenges, I would talk about the high upfront capital costs. Local markets may lack the financial depth to support such projects alone. We are talking about projects representing hundreds millions of dollars of investment. We are facing the limited access to affordable financing in some of the countries of the region. So while commercial banks and local institutions may provide debt, the cost of this debt and this capital can be prohibitive. So many Latin American countries and Caribbean countries face higher risk premiums, making financing more expensive compared to developed markets or compared to other markets. The third challenges, and I will come to the solution after, but further challenges are the less interest of some banks in some countries. And this, we regret that when we are developing projects especially in the Caribbean. And last but not least, the bankability of the off-takers present in the Latin American and Caribbean regions. How can we overcome this and address these challenges? As the private sector in HCF Energy, we are using project finance structure. This is a mix of equity and debt to finance our project. This is really common and standard in renewable infrastructure to attract both private and institutional capital. We won the Project Finance International Award in 2021 for this project finance structure of our project in French Guiana. And I would say we are leveraging funding in various levels, local and international, public and private. Local and international, collaborating with multilateral and national development institutions, such as the EIB, the Green Climate Fund, and the IDB Invest, for example. It ensures local buy-in while accessing global funding pools, dealing also with regional banks and commercial banks. And between public and private sectors using blended finance as well. So we have lower cost of capital through concessional loans and guarantees. We share the risk with commercial banks and institutional institutions, and we have the provision of political and financial backing thanks to these international development institutions. And I have 1 minute left to give you the example of our project we are developing in Barbados. This is the project that will provide renewable and non-intermittent electricity and will contribute to the decarbonization objectives set to reach 100% of renewable electricity and energy in 2030 in Barbados. This project will increase the share of renewable energy in Barbados. That will provide economic development. We will contribute to job creation and to increase the independence of the region towards fossil fuels. The project represents an investment of $170 million, and we structured this investment as a project finance with the combination of equity and debt. We lower the risk through the help of the IFC and the IDB Invest that are supporting the project, providing a portion of debt. And I want to highlight that IFC and IDB Invest are not only debt provider. They help us in leading a strong environmental and social review process. They are more than debt provider, they are partners for us in the region, and I think for all the private sectors that are working hand by hand with IFC and IDB Invest. We are also working with the Green Climate Fund for the concessional loan, for concessional loan, and their involvement signals credibility. And with IDB Invest, IFC, Green Climate Fund on board, we attract commercial banks to diversify the investments. And as Minister Chapman mentioned, and Mrs. Mouchet as well, we need trust, and thanks to multilateral institutions on our project, this brings trust to the table for the private sector to attract commercial bank as well. Finally, we have the EU on board with the Global Gateway stamp on our project, and through the EIB, that provides counter guarantee on the local debt and grants. We have this combination of lower risk on the project, to share the risk on the project. So multilateral and national development institutions play a crucial role in de-risking the project, in securing the project, and in making the decarbonization of the regions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Clara. You managed to it was like, maybe that was the plan, and I'm looking at Sebastian. You managed to summarize and get everyone into your presentation or your intervention. So it was not a recap, but like a proof of the concept of collaboration. We have 7 minutes, and you're only 6, so minute each for final reflections, and I will start where I began.
Thank you and goodbye. Starting from last, Clara, she mentioned something special, and looks like we read her words before, no? trust and the cost of capital. And that's one of the things I mentioned. If for us to attract private investment, we need that certainty, not only just the rule of law and the trust, but also you have to decrease the barrier of financial cost. Not only your equity, your capital cost, but also financing for have the average cost of capital to lower it. In my previous intervention, I didn't have time to mention infrastructure, which is quite important. And multilaterals play a key role for both private and public, and when there is a partnership as well. Basically, it's a seal of endorsement. Infrastructure in Panama, we're talking about our competitive advantage of position, geographical position, which includes obviously the Panama Canal, ports, where there's a lot to do there, airports, and improve the current airport, and everything you can think of in terms of infrastructure beyond electricity and transmission, which includes roads, bridges, transportation, highways, so on and so forth. So it's all encompassing in what's been measured in this panel.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. We are moving to Federico.
Sí, muchas gracias.
Yes, thank you very much. This concept of resilience has received a lot of emphasis in the previous panel and this one, and I'd like to talk about that. Resilience is something which the Inter-American Development Bank is actively working in the Dominican Republic, for the simple reason that disasters have become very much a common phenomena in the current climate conditions. We have 8 projects underway funded by the IDB, which represent a significant percentage, 8 or 9% of GDP out of the projects. The next highest rate is 4.9% in other countries. So we're working on these 8 projects in the Dominican Republic. They are climate related, but also focusing on the well-being of the population. There's been a huge boom in construction in the Dominican Republic. All of this aiming to strengthen resilience. Resilience has another dimension that we must mention, and that is IT. IT is or consumes energy to unsustainable levels. It has also led to major deforestation of the Dominican Republic. Energy requirements are met by a number of households burning wood, for example, so that has also contributed to deforestation, and the country cannot be resilient, cannot survive disasters in those conditions. It's absolutely unsustainable. We worked with the Ministry of External Affairs, and I quantified the amount that we would need to run projects to correct this deforestation and reliance on burning wood for subsistence. For households, heating and cooking, to replace these practices with something that's more environmentally sustainable, something that has a direct impact on people. So forest cover and sustainability is very important in that regard, with regard to energy consumption.
Thank you very much, Raga. I think we need, well, that's at least the way I like to present it, we need a triple-level coalition between the politics, that includes the policy, it includes the partnerships. It includes what the European Union is doing in the continent. We're just back from signing a modernized free trade agreement with Mexico. We have free trade agreements with the whole continent. Mercosur has entered into force finally. We need an alliance of the politics and the policy and the partnerships with a financial level, public and private. We need to bring people around the table. The European Union is trying to do that through the Global Gateway to bring grants, guarantees, loans, member states to add up and to look forward. And then we need, and I think Clara also said it, we need an alliance with the private sector and the industry. We need to ask the industry what they can do for us, as much as what we can do for them. And if you've read the amount of people that HDF, with whom we have a very close contact for many of the projects, the amount of people we've been having to talk to and they've been having to talk to, you then understand why things are not happening. It's because we still need to talk to a lot of people because the needs are too big. So I would say the politics, the financing, and the industry needs to work together to make this transformation happen.
Thank you. If I were to sum this up, it's the 5 Ps: politics, policy, partnerships, public-private, and then, which is the facility, you have to get them together. And then the 6th P, which is the process that needs to be simplified.
And the 7th P. The private sector.
I said public-private.
Oh, yeah.
Got it. So, Michelle.
Creo que conocemos y tendemos a coincidir bastante.
Well, yes, we need to face the challenges of our time, and dealing with the current challenges is not going to happen if we maintain the status quo. So in the context that we're living in, we can't work as isolated nations. We need to convert the pressure that we're under now into an impulse towards greater democracy, renewal of the multilateral system as well, and renewal of our resilience, various elements to put in place the financial ecosystem that we've been mentioning. Putting in place those virtuous spirals that we've mentioned. This must be a collective effort with all of the actors, all the stakeholders that we've mentioned. And we should also be very clear that despite the very high uncertainties of the current situation, the political dynamics of the current day offer a unique opportunity for Latin America and the Caribbean. We should capitalize on that by developing alliances with other stakeholders, with the European Union, with the Americas, and with what we're going to be talking about in our next session. So that because we share values, we share principles, we should build on that. And I'll conclude by saying that despite the magnitude of the challenges ahead of us, this is a region that has a great deal of hope, and this region has demonstrated that hope in the past in the face of complex and difficult situations. It has demonstrated its capacity to reinvent itself, to recover, to rise above, and we should build on that spirit and imagine the future for our democracies and our development.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. Going to Noemi.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I would say that investing in the Greater Caribbean means investing in ocean governance, sustainability, economic development for people, development of people, and investing in other regions as well, because the benefits of the Greater Caribbean are felt beyond our coastlines. And I fully agree with what has just been said by Michelle. We need to ensure effective multilateralism. The multilateralism we advocate for at the ACP is effective, and as we mentioned earlier, we have a strategic plan from 2025 onwards, and it's about reaching consensus among 25 states, and that's something where we see multilateralism being very effective indeed.
Again, to bring it home.
We'll try. Maybe being optimistic, it is working. We have everything that we need to succeed and to develop private project with private sector and public sector. Yes, as private sector, we need continued coordination. We need continued support from the public sector, from the multilateral and national development institution, at least until the final investment decision and until the launch of the project to overcome regulatory issues, but it is working.
Wonderful. That is a way to conclude. It is working. So we just have to make sure that we will see and reap the benefits because, as she said, it's working. I want to ask you to join me in giving this fantastic panel a round of applause. I want to thank all of you for your great interventions. And I don't know about you, I feel more optimistic after than before. So many thanks. Now, I would like to offer you to take your seats again, because now we have another session coming up. where I was looking forward to welcoming my good friend Silvia Darín Pagneto, who is the director of the OECD Council and Executive Committee Secretariat, but also a special advisor to the Secretary-General on Latin America and the Caribbean. She was supposed to moderate the next session, but unfortunately she fell ill and regrettably is not able to be here with us today. But we have a good stand-in in my Deputy Director, Federico Bonaglia, who with no notice accepted to take on this challenge. So I will move seats and give you the floor, Federico. Mike. His mic is not working.
Test.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And let me join my director in wishing our colleague Silvia speedy recovery. I will do my best to play the role of moderator and timekeeper. And so without further ado, I would like to invite to join us here on stage the speakers that will help us mark the 10th anniversary of the Latin America and Caribbean regional program. Raga, who is the director of the Development Centre, is already here. I would like to invite my colleague Andreas, whose seat is over there. Annabelle Gonzalez, please, your seat is here. Benoît Larocque, s'il vous plaît, votre siège. No, Andrea is at the end, so that you need to walk. Because then we have the picture, so we have already seen it. Benoît, je vous en prie. La ministra Indiana Trejos, de Costa Rica.
Minister Trejos from Costa Rica, please.
La subsecretaria Valeria.
The Undersecretary of Foreign Affairs, Valeria Sucasi from Uruguay. Please take a seat.
Creo que somos todos.
And I believe that's all of us.
This segment, as I said, is meant to celebrate the achievements of the 10th year of the LAC, Latin America and Caribbean Regional Program of the OECD. Anniversary is a good opportunity to look back, but are even a better opportunity to look forward. And we had this morning the meeting of the steering committee of the regional program, where the current co-chairs, Uruguay and Costa Rica, helped us understanding the direction of travel. And so this would be really a good opportunity to hear about the achievements of the program and how we can build on those achievements to become even more relevant and impactful for the region. So in order to do that, we have here an excellent panel of speakers. We have about 40 minutes for this panel. I would suggest that each one of you uses 5 to 6 minutes to address one question, and if we have some time, we can then give the floor back to each one of you. Puedes hablar en español, en inglés.
Feel free to speak English, French, or Spanish, as you prefer.
I'm going to start in English, and I'm going to start by asking to my director a question about how the Development Centre is cooperating with the region. We have 15 members, the last one being Barbados, and I would like to welcome here Ambassador Hines from Barbados. So how has the Centre cooperation with the region evolved over the last 10 years? How have we been supporting the program, and what do you think, Raga, we can do to make the impact of the program through the work of the Centre even greater? Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Federico, and for stepping in at the last minute. Yes, I like anniversaries. So the child is 10 years old. Someone said, I think it was you, Andreas, that going from childhood to teenage and teenagers can be difficult, but this child is going to swing through the teenage years, I think, without any troubles. What's the Development Centre? We have been privileged to be a part of this for the whole decade, and I think with that the contribution has been very important, and I think that what we see happen with a program like this, in going back to the panel that I was just moderating, that when you bring all of the actors to the same table, something magical happens. And here we have the member countries of the Latin member countries of the OECD. We have the 15 LAC members that we have, and then also it's open to all OECD countries. And as we saw today in the meeting, we had non-LAC countries there in the room, and then we have all of the parts of the house of the OECD. We have the Development Centre, which is a bridge builder, which is a pathfinder. We bridge between OECD and non-OECD, between OECD and developing and emerging countries or economies. So that is one of the important role. Also, the convening power and the dialogue that is at the heart of the center, where we and since the Development Centre is not the sort of the standard-setting body of the OECD. It's a convener. It's a place for conversations on equal footing between countries of all income levels. And that is very important in a conversation like, or in a program like this, that you can have the dialogue, because the dialogue is not just, just a dialogue, but it's a way to find solutions to common problems and to learn from each other. So that is one thing that we very much cherish. Looking ahead, I am sure that the LAC regional program will continue to be a very important cornerstone in the OECD's relations with the LAC region. And I think the Development Centre, and of course I'm a little biased, but of course the Development Centre is and will be continue to be contributing to the program. One thing that the Development Centre also brings into the equation is the multidimensionality, multidimensional emphasis, because development is not it's complicated. It's multidimensional. And if we have multidimensional problems, we need multidimensional solutions. We can think of an issue area like informality. You have to look at that through different lenses: labor, taxes, social policy, and social cohesion. So we bring that aspect into the discussion. Also, we can also help strengthen cross-regional learning. We are working on Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and all of these regions are working on the same issues. But from what we can bring is the learning, like we were having today at the lunch with Asia and Latin America. And finally, I think we can also bring in the aspect of helping the program sort of identify and be ahead of the curve, because in our conversations we identify as a pathfinder, which is one of our role, we identify and have in the past identified solutions to problems that or ways to solve problems that hadn't been done before.
Thank you, Raga. Let's now move to Andreas, who's the Director of Global Relations and Cooperation here at the OECD. And together with your directorate, Andreas, we have been supporting over the last 10 years this program. And I would like to ask you, how do you think the program has made a difference? What have been the major multilateral milestones that the program has achieved since its launch? And looking back to look forward, on the basis of this assessment, what do you think should be the priorities for the years ahead? Please.
Thanks so much, Federico. Allow me to make 3 remarks before you count my time. First of all, happy Republic Day to you, Federico. 80 years of the Italian Republic is quite something to celebrate. Second, happy anniversary, happy birthday to the whole panel, to everybody, because this is not a program of the center or of GRC. This is a program of all of us. And all of you, I should say, all of you, the members, the partners in Latin America. And this is what makes me exciting together with Raga about this program, that it's a program which really has created ownership. And third remark before you can count my time, thanks so much for putting me on the far left wing of the panel, because this is a place where I feel very comfortable. So this brings me to the question, what has this program brought to all of us? I believe we need to see this program in a larger context of our cooperation with Latin America over the last 2 decades. And as Raga said, the Development Centre was certainly a pioneer in the relation with Latin America, but also the whole of the House has tried to engage with Latin American countries since the late 90s, early 2000s. I see Sarkis from Brazil over there. We started with Brazil late 90s. We started with Argentina late 90s. We did country programs with Peru starting in 2015, 2016. So it's a longer-term process, and this longer-term process has also been amplified by those countries from the region who have become a member. As you know, Mexico became a member of the OECD in 1994, Chile in 2010, Colombia 2020, Costa Rica 2021, and now we are in accession process with 3 more countries, Brazil, Argentina, and Peru. So in a way, this is a longer-term history of the OECD becoming more attractive for countries in the region, for becoming more to-go place for policy reform, for policy advice, and everybody who is sitting on this side of the panel has been contributing to this endeavor. So I'm always saying the OECD has turned to Latin America, but also Latin America has turned to the OECD in the last 10 to 20 years. So in a way, the program and the creation of the program 10 years ago was a manifestation of this readiness of the region to move closer to the OECD, and also of the OECD to open up to Latin America. And there are a number, and if I find my numbers here now, there are a number of things, just to look at a few numeralias, what has happened in the last 10 years. The number of country reviews of LAC countries each year has on average doubled from 15 to 36, and all parts of the House, including Development Centre, are contributing. LAC adherence to OECD legal instruments has tripled from 1902, when we started the program, to 302. The region's participation in OECD committees has doubled from 90 to 170. And as Raga was just saying, the number of members from the regional development center, I think from 10 to 15, am I right? So the engagement has also further deepened with 15 regional policy networks linking OECD committees with the region. We had a number of high-level dialogues. We had in total 10 ministerial summits with the regional program. So 10, and I remember the first summit we had in Chile, the productivity was presided by Michelle Bachelet at that time, and she was at that occasion she coined the frame that the OECD is not the club of the rich but the club of the best practices, and that's there you could see that having members in that region who have the convening power to bring countries together to the region is crucial for the OECD in order to have an impact. So in sum, I believe the program has delivered a growing interest in terms of membership. We are now having a country program with Paraguay. We have the interest of Panama, of the Dominican Republic, of Uruguay to work closer with the OECD and to see where we can land such a kind of cooperation. We had Costa Rica chairing the MCM last year, making a huge imprint with the LAC strategic framework. So in sum, I think this is the program is more of a part of a broader process, and it's a good process, and it's a process. I mean, me as director for global relations, I'm very excited about, and very happy to work with all of you, with Isabel. But also with the co-chairs of the program, with the Development Centre, to really make this continue to make a real impact for the region. There's a lot to do, and we better get to act together, and that's where we stand. With that, I give it back to you, Federico. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Also for the remembering 2nd of June is the day of our republic, the day we turned into a republic 8 years ago. Let me now move to Annabelle Gonzalez, that you all know from IDB. IDB is by definition a major partner, a partner of the region, but you have been over the 10 years a very strong partner of the regional program through Washington, but also your staff in Madrid, in Brussels, say Carla here. And you play a very important role in bringing, as you said in your speech, Annabelle, the good practices of wherever they are, including the OECD, closer to Latin America. We also try to bring the good practice from Latin America to the OECD. I think it's a two-way street. So my question to you will be, from your vantage point of being a key actor in Latin America and the Caribbean, and being a very strong partner in the Latin American program here at the OECD, what has been the impact of this program, and what would you suggest we should do together to make the impact even greater, please?
Thank you very much, Federico. And first and foremost, congratulations to all those who have taken part in the program. I'd like to begin by congratulating all of those who have participated in the Latin America and Caribbean regional program over the past 10 years. I believe that this is a testament to the successful bringing together of the organization and the region of Latin America and the Caribbean. It's also a success story of how we've been able to bring Latin America and the Caribbean to the OECD and how they can contribute to the organization. I believe that there are three main takeaways from the Latin America and Caribbean regional program in terms of its contributions. First of all, I believe that it has elevated discussions on public policies in the region by incorporating evidence, peer discussions, and standards within discussions on reform, and that is essential. Secondly, I believe that it has enabled us to build a more structured agenda in areas such as productivity, competition, skills, fiscal sustainability, digital transformation. All of these issues are addressed not in an isolated manner, but as part of a broader development agenda. And I believe that the Development Centre with Raga, Federico and the team has a key role to play in this programme, because they have been able to keep up the development vision that guides the programme. Third, I believe that the programme has enabled countries to look beyond the short-term horizon. At a time where there are competing immediate emergencies and demands, I believe that a long-term vision has great value. The past 10 years have focused on ideas and standards, and that's essential, and we need to continue along this path. But we also have to think about future steps. In the future, we also need to look towards implementation and results. And Andreas has already presented some very interesting results. The accession of a number of countries from our region to the OECD is very interesting because it reflects the willingness of our region to align with global standards. And I think that's very noteworthy. Now, this afternoon, we mentioned that Latin America and the Caribbean has made significant progress in economic terms and development terms in a complex environment. But this is not sufficient. We need to transform that stability into more sustainability, more investment, more employment. And this requires improving conditions for private investment by incorporating all of the aspects we highlighted this afternoon. And this is where the IDB and the OECD partnership can be particularly complementary. The OECD provides peer reviews, international experience, deep analysis. We heard earlier about a dialogue between LAC countries and Asian countries that took place earlier on. And that's very valuable. These regions have a lot to learn from each other. It's useful to hear from the Asian experience about value chains, etc., and vice versa. Other regions can learn from Asia and LAC. So all of these areas can be great for complementarity. We also have 26 offices in Latin America and the Caribbean at the IDB level. We have specialists working for us in a number of areas. We have great operational capacity, financing mechanisms, and long-standing relations with governments in the region. And this is why I believe that together, and this is what we're striving to do, we can support countries to move from diagnosis to design, from design to implementation, and from implementation to measurable results. I believe that this is the path that we should be charting together for the future, which is based on aligned standards set by the countries themselves. It needs to be a process that's guided by countries and driven by them. We need to identify the main constraints and challenges, to adopt a realistic approach, mobilize private investment, whilst focusing on implementation. So I believe that the next step, and I hope that we will be able to look back in 10 years' time on this, will require focusing on drawing on analysis in order to improve the quality of life of people in the Latin America and Caribbean region. Thank you very much for focusing on the matter of quality of living. This is part of what we do here, designing better policies for better lives. And now, in French, I'll switch to Benoit Larouki, who is a National Assembly member representing French citizens in Latin America and the Caribbean. Benoit, since you took up this very important position, you have been involved in a number of meetings with representatives from the region, including members of parliament. You've also worked with the Agence française du développement and the government to strengthen cooperation with Latin America and the Caribbean. What are your main takeaways from all of the discussions you've had with representatives of civil society, members of parliament, and representatives of the private sector? And as regards members of parliament in Europe and in Latin America, what role can they play in exchanges between the OECD and Latin America to improve the life of citizens and to yield impact? You can speak whichever language you choose, French or Spanish. Well, that's a very broad question. And the truth is that there are two reasons why I started my career in politics. The first is to fight against radical politics, but also looking at development from a broad perspective. I want to have a significant impact, not putting out a fire with a drop. I believe that there are lots of us working together, and together we'll be able to achieve this.
So, in all my journeys and all my travels, what I systematically do is meet the local MPs. I also go on field visits to see the development projects, notably those that are funded by the AFD. And I mentioned that there were 19 million euros invested in AFD projects in Latin America since 2019. And it's essential that all these themes also be treated by parliamentarians, and there are different mechanisms that we can implement in that regard. I really promote the OECD. I speak about Leo, and I mentioned that actually in my opening speech whenever I do this, and many of the parliamentarians that I speak to don't know anything about it. Some yes, but others no. There are groups of friends within parliaments, friendships with different countries, and I think it would be a good idea to create a group of friends of parliamentarians with the OECD in different Latin American parliaments. And I could start this as soon as you give the go-ahead. I could start with a small group, and in fact, this is slightly different. We can't necessarily create groups, but I can start to talk about this to the president of the French Parliament, and we could, in a sense, create this on a remote basis, first on a virtual basis, first and foremost. The reason for this would be a way of really trying to ensure that all the information that's provided in these various studies and by the OECD that trickle down to the parliamentarians, such that there be an advocate within the parliament that speaks in favor of the OECD, that is, in a sense, an informal ambassador of the ideas propounded by the OECD in the centre. And I think this would be a really efficient, simple way of making our message heard. Because there's so many reports that we have to read, there's so many reports that land on our desk that we receive by email, that sometimes it's very difficult to try to distinguish those that are quality reports from the less qualitative ones. Furthermore, as a parliamentarian, I think we can play an essential role in pushing for cooperation projects, especially those which need political will. And we are lucky enough to be a tie-in between our own government and other governments in the countries where we have embassies. And this serves as a way to promote different projects. I was talking about with the Minister of Costa Rica. When I spoke to the ambassador in Costa Rica, there was a project there with all the different promoters and the banks. And I talked about this. I started this project and I communicated to the French Parliament about the different aspects of the projects. And so again, in our local parliaments, we're either dealing with domestic issues that could be elections, for example, or we look at daily operational issues linked to legislative processes, things that don't necessarily have a direct bearing on international development or international issues. So I could talk about this group of friends, if you wish, and I would then promote it in the 33 countries where I travel regularly so that we could develop mirror groups so we could have a real network in the region as a whole. Well, thank you very much. That's an excellent idea. And it's true that we do try and reach out to parliamentarians. The OECD has a parliamentary network, actually, which is open to the member states of the OECD and the accession countries. And when we launched the LEO, the Latin American Economic Outlook, we also tried to reach out to parliamentarians in the various countries. But I do think this is a very valid idea, and I think we should mention it to the co-chairs of the regional program to see how we could translate this into a reality and how we could actually give a bigger role to parliamentarians in terms of the part that they could play in the next stages of the regional program. So I'd have a question for one of the co-chairs of the regional program, notably I direct this question to the Minister of Foreign Trade in Costa Rica, Minister Trejos. As we heard, Costa Rica has played a significant role in strengthening the program, and I can see the ambassador here, my friend the ambassador, who also led this initiative and made sure that this was really at the forefront of the ministerial that they hosted. In that context, there was a strategic framework that was adopted to be able to move forward with the objectives within the regional program. I wanted to ask the minister, from a Costa Rican perspective, how you consider that this strategic framework and the implementation plan associated with it could strengthen the objectives of the regional program. You have the floor. Well, since this is a celebration, I wanted to add another celebration. Last week, Costa Rica celebrated the anniversary of its 5th year as a member of this organization, and we are very proud of that. And as you rightly pointed out, during the chairmanship that we had last year of the ministerials, we organized on the eve of the ministerial the Latin American and Caribbean Forum. And the reason we decided to ensure that it was organized there is because it really raises the profile of the discussions that are held. Latin America moving forward hand in hand with the OECD, and within the strategic framework that was launched, and at the moment we've adopted the implementation plan for that framework. What we're trying to do now is go beyond a roadmap. What we want to have is a shared vision for the next decade. And in that regard, Costa Rica worked unstintingly to develop a new vision such that the following decade be even more fruitful in the results that they bring to bear than the last. And the pillars on which the program rests are really horizontal now. And the idea is that we really break down the silos between the different actions that we have. It's impossible to talk about productivity, social inclusion, governance, sustainability, environmental sustainability in isolation. And this is something that was said at the outset. For example, if you talk about formality, you're talking about social policy, labor policy, but it also touches on productivity, or it means that we have to deal with SMEs and how to ensure that SMEs be brought into the formal sector. So this is really of the essence, that we deal with things in a horizontal manner. So I consider that the next 10 years will be really fruitful, that we'll be able to draw on them. And I would like, in that regard, to invite you to take a more active role, to get involved. And if you haven't yet done so, it's time to step into the stage. And so I would invite you to come to the 1st of July meeting that we're going to be holding in Madrid, and the ministerial that will be organized in Montevideo, where we're going to look at AI in link with innovation and inclusion. These are current topics, I'm sure you'll agree. And I'm sure that you will all bring to bear important ideas, make great contributions for the region, hand in hand with the OECD. And the OECD has been a strategic partner, not just for Costa Rica, but for many here today. And there's much that we can gain from learning and building together for the benefit of all. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for these words, and in fact for the leadership that Costa Rica has provided. Congratulations on that. I don't think any country, any member managed to become a chair country of the OECD in such a speedy time frame, in a mere 4-5 years. So congratulations on that. And this leads me to speaking now to Valeria Tsukasi, who's the Undersecretary of Foreign Affairs in Uruguay. Uruguay is again the co-chair of the program, as we heard. The minister mentioned this. And you notably focused on the fact that Uruguay wanted to bring a more hefty contribution to tightening relations between the OECD and the LATAM Caribbean region. You've played an important role in the Development Centre in previous years. And so what I'd like to ask you is how you see the upcoming Montevideo meeting, how or what role it will play, especially in terms of what we've just heard the Costa Rican minister say about a horizontal approach to the shared challenges of the region that we've identified in the analyses that we provide. Thank you very much. Well, thank you. Firstly, in this time of celebration of the 10 years of the program, I think that we should also congratulate the Development Centre, because it's at the heart of these processes as well. And we know that this was one of the engines that led to the program bearing such success. And I think this has come out in the previous interventions. The program has contributed to our countries really changing and fine-tuning our vision, the vision that we have of OECD and how we can work together. And we now see the OECD, rather than as being a club for the rich, as an organization which provides best practices, which provides peer learning experiences for the different countries. And so it really is a collective effort. It's clear now that we have a clear diagnosis of the different challenges that we face. We've taken stock, and we've also looked at the different kinds of solutions that we can bring to bear for the region. In that context, it enables us to focus in on the interests of the countries in the region. I think that this is really a central pillar that needs to be recalled again and again. The regional program for the region was or came out of the OECD, but is also led by the countries itself. And so in that context, we need to focus on the demands that stem from the ground, that stems from the countries in the region. And this is particularly true in a world where there is a lot of disconnection. So it's important to focus on the successes of the Latin American Regional Program. We do this because we've noted that in these complex times, this kind of program can bring to bear an adequate response to the challenges that we face. And this is what we'll be focusing on in the ministerial meeting in Montevideo. We're going to be working on instating that horizontality all the way through the discussions to send out a signal that that themes that may seem a bit more far removed from the concerns of the region are not at all. For example, innovation. Innovation really ties in to productivity, which leads into employment growth, raising productivity levels. And I think that having this much more wide-ranging vision of the different themes with a single approach and a single window through, for example, the prism of innovation, is one way that we can walk into the future with the LATAM regional program. So we would invite you to join us in Montevideo to discuss these themes, and why not to start thinking about new strategies whereby we can tie these concerns into other areas of concern or other areas that are important to the region. Why shouldn't we also bring to bear other ministries, aside from just economics and finance ministries, include, for example, parliamentarians, as was clearly pointed out, and civil society? I think this would be really important. We're stepping into a new stage here, and so I think it would be really auspicious to do so. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Valeria.
It is really nice to hear how there is a kind of shared narrative and understanding about what the region needs and what we can do together. And I think that, and I will close with this before asking those who have to come for the picture on stage to come, but I think that this is what we've been trying to do over the last several years with this forum and with the Latin American Economic Outlook, to provide a shared narrative, a constant and coherent diagnostics that can support implementation and results. And so it's really heartening, and I would like to thank also my colleagues who have been working for all these years, and the colleagues also from the global relations on the program, because I think that we have achieved a lot, and there is still a lot that we can achieve, but it's good to hear that you, that our shareholders, consider that progress has been made. So without further ado, I would like to ask all of you to stand, because we're going to have a picture in a second, sorry. Because first, I would like to call on stage the former co-chairs of the Latin American and Caribbean Regional Program. And so I would like to ask in this order, not in disorder, Paraguay, Chile, Colombia, Brazil, Mexico, and Peru.
If you could join us, the countries I've just mentioned, come up to the stage for the photo, and you can see your name plates along the stage there, so if you can find yourselves and set up for the photograph. Thank you.
you are the... So I would like to ask to stay with us for the closing panel that will be moderated by Ambassador David Brooke, who is the permanent representative of Ireland to the OECD and UNESCO. He is also the chair of the governing board of the Development Centre and a Latino in his corazon, given his diplomatic career in Argentina, Venezuela, and elsewhere. So a Latino en el corazon. David, the floor is yours.
Gracias, Federico. Thank you so much. And listen, I was hoping the music would stay on because there was a nice Latino dance there to be had. But look, good afternoon, everybody. We're coming to the close, obviously, of this edition of the International Economic Forum on Latin America and the Caribbean. I just wanted to say, before anything else, I just wanted to really sincerely thank all the speakers and participants for what has been a really rich and forward-looking discussion. And a big thank you, of course, to all the Secretariat team, Raga, and all her colleagues who've really made this, I think, a fantastic event. There's a lot of events going on this afternoon in the OECD, as you'll have seen outside, and I've dipped my head into one or two of them, but I think this, in terms of the quality of the conversations, is really right up there. So thank you again to all our speakers. I just would like, first of all, just to invite to the stage, we have two amazing speakers to close us out here. First of all, Luis Enrique Arroyo Sanchez, the President of the Council of Ministers of Peru. Señor Primer Ministro, I invite you to come up and take, is he here? Yes, he is. There he is, indeed. You take a seat there. And also Susana Sumelso, who's the Secretary of State for Iberoamerica and the Caribbean of Spain. So two, I think, wonderful speakers who are going to close things out for us, and representing, I think, two countries who are, I think, great supporters, both of them, of the OECD and of and indeed of the Development Centre, of course, as well. Bueno, voy a seguir un poco.
So I'm going to continue in Spanish for a bit. Throughout the afternoon, we've been hearing very diverse points of view from ministers, from international organizations, from partners and private sector representatives. And I think that one message has been particularly clearly expressed. Latin America and the Caribbean are finding themselves at a time of profound global change, but also major opportunity. Our exchanges today have brought out the magnitude of those challenges, but also the infrastructure gaps, the financing gaps, but also the enormous potential of a region rich in natural resources, rich in human capital, in renewable energy, and in international alliances. We've also been reminded of the importance of dialogue, of international cooperation, and solid alliances between countries, the private sector, and multilateral institutions to move forward in more resilient, more inclusive, and more sustainable development. The very spirit that this forum promotes year after year. So it's a great pleasure to give the floor to our distinguished guests for the concluding remarks. First of all, I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Luis Enrique Arroyo Sanchez, President of the Council of Ministers of Peru. Peru is a valuable member of the OECD Development Centre and also a very active partner in the organization's regional initiatives. The country is currently in the process of joining the OECD, which reflects its commitment to multilateralism and to reforms aimed to promote more inclusive, resilient and sustainable growth. Prime Minister Luis Enrique, I give you the floor. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all an excellent afternoon. I'd like to begin by expressing Peru's appreciation to the OECD Development Centre, to the Inter-American Development Bank and the French Development Agency for organizing this International Economic Forum, which represents one of the main spaces for reflection and dialogue on the future of Latin America and the Caribbean. This edition was particularly significant, coinciding as it does with the 10th anniversary of the OECD Latin America and Caribbean Regional Program. For Peru, this regional program has particular importance between 2016 and 2019. Along with Chile, I served as the first co-chair of the program, a phase that enabled us to contribute to defining its strategic projection and priorities. And we are now candidates for membership of the OECD in the natural follow-up of that procedure. This relationship has been particularly valuable and has also contributed to strengthening coordination and complementarity with other mechanisms, such as the Pacific Alliance and APEC, consolidating international insertion of our region. In Peru's accession process to the OECD is shared by other countries of the region. The OECD is a solid tool accompanying the reforms that our country has been promoting and representing, a tool that accompanies, guides and promotes transformations developed in the country. The OECD is providing that impetus to the development of our country. The various committees and secretariats, the plenary sessions organized by the meeting have contributed in areas such as regional development, labor formalization, agriculture, fisheries, regulatory policy, consumer policy, competition, digitalization, integrity, education, environmental sustainability, the labor market, among others. And this has contributed to strengthening institutional quality and improving the well-being of our citizens. Our region faces the challenge of adapting to profound economic, technological and geopolitical transformations in an increasingly dynamic and competitive global scenario. We are also pursuing strategic opportunities to implement more sustainable challenges, to become more resilient and inclusive. As the report Latin American Economic Outlook 2025 states, Peru has abundant natural resources, renewable energy, ecosystems, and emerging innovation ecosystems. However, we cannot deny that persistent structural constraints linked to low productivity and limited economic diversification continue to affect competitivity and insertion in global value chains. This forum has brought out central issues for the future of our region. Strengthening competitivity, deepening economic integration, and mobilizing investment and financing for development. It is essential to continue to move forward reforms to improve infrastructure, accelerate the technological transformation, promote alliances and strategic partnerships to catalyze investment, innovation, and support for strategic sectors. We need a solid collaboration between the public and private sectors also. In this context, mobilization of financing is essential to translate the region's potential into concrete opportunities. Multilateral financial institutions and development banks are key strategic partners in this endeavor, of course, not just as the source of funding, but also to structure projects, to reduce risks, and to create the conditions for greater private sector engagement. In an international scenario marked by fiscal restrictions and increasing social and environmental demands, strengthening these types of partnerships will be a determining factor fundamental to promoting investments with concrete impacts on growth and the well-being of our citizens. Peru has been promoting efforts to strengthen institutional articulation, to promote projects relating to connectivity, the energy transition, and the modernization of productivity, moving towards more modern, transparent, and pro-competitive regulatory frameworks. Our objective is to consolidate our economic foundations, to create a level playing field in which business success testifies to our capacity to innovate and to contribute to the collective well-being. In conclusion, I congratulate the organizers for promoting this space of dialogue and reflection. Peru will continue to actively participate in these fora, convinced that working together and multilateralism remain essential tools to build a more resilient, integrated region. We reaffirm our commitment to the OECD accession process and to the values and standards promoted by the organization as a state policy to strengthen our institutions, to foster more productive economies, and to build more inclusive societies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sir, and President of the Council of Ministers. We'll now hear from Susana Somelso, Secretary of State for Ibero-America and the Caribbean in Spain. Spain, for many years, has been a key partner in supporting Latin America and the Caribbean countries through the OECD, including through supporting platforms for dialogue and cooperation, such as the Latin America Economic Outlook Report and Development Dynamics, as well as their initiative to push for fiscal justice and the strengthening of regional dialogue. As part of the steering committee at the Development Centre of the OECD, Spain has been very proactive in promoting equal relations with greater visibility to the region and its partnership with the OECD. Spain has been a very active participant in organising high-level dialogues involving the region, and this is why we're very interested in hearing your views on these matters. Secretary of State, Susana, you have the floor. Thank you very much, and good afternoon. Distinguished Director of the Development Centre, Raga, representatives of the Inter-American Development Bank and the Agence française du développement. Dear colleagues, it's a pleasure to join you on this side of the Atlantic. First and foremost, allow me to congratulate you on behalf of Spain and to thank the Development Centre for the organisation of this session, as well as the commitment to Latin America and the Caribbean. It's a pleasure to take part for the third consecutive year in this Economic Forum on Latin America and the Caribbean of the OECD, which has consolidated its position as a key platform for dialogue with the region. This year, we have focused on opening opportunities in a changing world. This was the topic of the session, and I believe it's particularly relevant. We've heard from the speakers on the various panels that we're in a global context marked by geopolitical changes, tensions, economic divides, digital and green transitions. A number of different changes, therefore. But we're also at a time where Latin America and the Caribbean have an increasingly strategic role to play, a role which is full of opportunities. We've heard from ministers of Paraguay, Costa Rica, Uruguay, Argentina, Mexico, Panama, the Dominican Republic, my colleague from Uruguay, Valeria. We've heard from the UNDP, the ACS. We've heard that there are challenges that we share, but there are also a number of opportunities to be seized because the region has a number of assets, biodiversity, critical resources, capacity to provide food supply. It also has a young, dynamic population. Moreover, it shares essential values with the OECD and its members. Commitment to multilateralism, democracy, international cooperation. And over the course of this afternoon's discussions, we've heard clearly that there is a transformative potential to be harnessed in Latin America and the Caribbean. And we've also heard about the challenges and the scale thereof in the region. This is why it is even more important now to bring Latin America and the Caribbean closer to the OECD. It's not just desirable, but it's strategic for the region and the organization. We've heard about cooperation, investing in value chains, infrastructure, digital and energy projects. We've heard that mobilizing more private and public investment for growth is essential, and it must be inclusive and sustainable. And we've also heard a critical message. None of these transformations can take place in an isolated manner. We need solid institutions, regional cooperation, predictable regulatory frameworks, and partnerships which are based on shared values. This is why the cooperation between the OECD and Latin America and the Caribbean is of critical strategic value. Spain believes in this vision, and we also believe that the Latin America and Caribbean regional program of the OECD is one of the most valuable tools to move forward in this direction. And it would be remiss of me to close without applauding the leadership of the current chairs of the regional program from Costa Rica and Uruguay, as well as the contributions of previous chairs who have helped to consolidate one of the most dynamic and successful programs of the OECD. Spain also stands ready to contribute actively to this new step, and as such, we will be honored to host on the 1st of July, alongside the OECD, a ministerial meeting for Latin America and the Caribbean on a day which is very special for all of us, and particularly for Spain. We are the secretary of the Ibero Summit, which will be held in November in Madrid. This will be an opportunity to reflect together on the relationship between the OECD and Latin America and the Caribbean over the coming decade. It will also be an opportunity to define a shared vision as regards our cooperation in international cooperation, financing for development, digital technology, artificial intelligence, institutional development, a number of key matters. Lastly, we will be able to give greater visibility to the OECD's role as a platform for bringing together Latin America and the Caribbean and Europe, as well as its members. Spain is very much committed to this goal, and we highlighted this during our presidency of the European Council by holding a summit which hadn't been held for 2 years. And we will be working with all of the members of the Ibero-American Summit, which will take place in Madrid in November. Now, by way of closing, I wish to share a message. In the current context, we need more dialogue. That's undeniable. We need more strategic partnerships between regions which share interests and values. And the 10th anniversary of this regional program is a timely occasion. We have heard from a number of speakers today. We know that the figures speak for themselves, But we mustn't just commemorate this anniversary. It must be an opportunity to initiate a next step of greater integration, greater cooperation, better public policies, a closer relationship between Latin American and Caribbean countries and the OECD. And in order to achieve this, you can count on Spain's help, and we look forward to welcoming you on the 1st of July in Madrid. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. Susana, Secretary of State.
Reached the end of the road, I think, así que finalmente quisiera agradecer nuevamente a todos.
Last but not least, I wish to thank each and every one of you for having contributed to such an enriching, dynamic and timely discussion. The challenge now is translating these messages into tangible action, further strengthening our partnerships and continue working together to harness opportunities for the region. But before we go back to work, I urge you to continue discussions in a more informal setting during the cocktail here in the Restaurant des Nations in the Conference Centre. That's all from me. Thank you very much. And that's the end. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, just before you leave, I just wanted to make sure that to express sincere thanks to the whole team, the whole Development Centre's team, who have been working night and day. And I just wanted to make sure that they heard it from all of us, how much we value their contribution. And I also wanted to take this opportunity, and of course, thank the interpreters as well, but I also wanted to take this opportunity to remember a very good friend of the Development Centre, former chair Manuel Escudero, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year. And listening to the Spanish minister just made me think of his valuable contributions. So I just wanted to make sure that in this forum, which he loved, that his name was mentioned. So thank you. Thank you again, and please join us at the reception.